Chapter 947. Mysterious Shop. Hellscythe_VampireCat. Chapter 947. Mysterious Shop. The moment Shi Feng left the teleportation hall, he saw dozens of 100-man teams rushing towards the slums. A few among them immediately attracted the attention of the surrounding players. The reason for such attention was these teams' all-female composition. There was not a single man among them. Such situations seldom occurred in the virtual gaming world. Moreover, the woman leading these teams was also extraordinary. The woman was dressed in a set of crimson mage robes that gave off a faint impression of scorching flames. In her hand, she held a silvery white crystal staff that constantly drew the ambient mana, causing illusions to appear around it. She was even level 40, a level which could rank her at the very top even in empires. However, compared to her dazzling equipment and level, her appearance and bearing held an even greater attraction for the surrounding players. She carried herself as if she was the empress of this space. One could not help but want to submit oneself to her rule. Doesn't that guild emblem belong to the 100 Flowers Palace of the Dark Knight Empire? Lucky. I actually got to see the Frost Flame Goddess cleansed Rue. This trip to White River City was definitely worth the money. When the male players on the street saw cleansed Rue, they all fell into a reverie. The title of Frost Flame Goddess was not one that cleansed Rue had long possessed. Cleansed Rue herself was a female player who had become famous in God's domain just recently. However, due to her superb combat power and beautiful appearance, many male players treated her as a goddess. The reason why Cleansed Rue was known as the Frost Flame Goddess was her extreme skill in fire and ice spells, which she had used to defeat over a dozen well-known experts in the virtual gaming world. Recently, she had even triumphed over the guild leader of a first-rate guild, her victory instantly solidifying her guild's rule over Silver Pine City, the 7th most populous city in the Dark Knight Empire. After that famous battle, she received the rank of 173rd in the latest update of the God's Domain Experts list. Meanwhile, aside from the 100 Flowers Palace, Shi Feng also spotted many teams belonging to other first-rate guilds. With just a single glance, he already noted 4 first-rate guilds, an impossible sight even in Star Moon City. Guild leader, I'll carry out an investigation right away, Aqua Rose hurriedly whispered to Shi Feng. She too found this situation perplexing. She was prepared to head to the slums personally to find out just what was capable of attracting the interest of so many large guilds. No need, Shi Feng said, shaking his head. But, there are so many guilds coming here. Aqua Rose was somewhat surprised that Shi Feng would actually have so little interest in such a huge incident. All of this is part of my plan. Zero Wings members just need to watch from the sidelines, Shi Feng explained secretly. Don't let others know of this matter. Before he headed to Titan City, he had sent Melancholic Smile to purchase some lands in the slums on the sly. The guilds and players in White River City paid practically no attention to the city's slums, and nearly all of the lands there were still ownerless. Hence, these lands were very cheap and easy to purchase. After purchasing the lands, he had constructed a shop there. He then had Melancholic Smile set up the teleportation magic array inside the shop. The location tied to the magic array was the teleportation point he had previously set up at the Twin Towers Kingdom. After that was done, he had hired a group of high-intelligence NPCs to manage the shop as well as ordered them to keep any information regarding the shop an absolute secret. To outsiders, all information regarding the shop would only appear as unknown, preventing players from finding out if an NPC or a player owned the shop. Afterwards, he had Melancholic Smile spread rumors of a shop that had appeared in the slums of White River City. A shop with a teleportation array that could send players directly to the Twin Towers Kingdom where players could freely kill low-level abyssal monsters to earn honor points. After that was done, he just needed to wait patiently for things to develop on their own. The ancient abyssal book was simply too dangerous. He absolutely could not allow others to find out he possessed the book. It would be very easy for others to make a connection between the teleportation array and the ancient abyssal book. Although not many should know about the secret of the abyssal book at the moment, Shi Feng did not wish to take any risks. Keeping his identity hidden while earning money through the collection of teleportation fees would be much safer. As an extra precaution, he didn't set up a teleportation shop in just White River City. Cities in the Black Dragon Empire and the Purple Thorns Kingdom also had them. All countries affected by the Abyss invasion had such shops set up in them, only the teleportation fees charged in these two countries were much higher than White River cities. As a result, ordinary players who could not afford frequent teleportations would choose to come to White River City instead. However, Shi Feng never expected that in less than a day's time, so many people would have already come to White River City. Moreover, everyone was highly interested in killing the abyssal monsters in the Twin Towers Kingdom. Aqua Rose was briefly stunned when she heard Shifeng's explanation. She was very curious about what method Shifeng had used to attract so many players and guilds. Although she did not investigate, she still managed to catch the gist of the situation from conversations of players on the streets. This sudden development greatly tempted the members of Shifeng's team. Currently, if one were to point out what the players of God's domain were most interested in, the first would have to be mounts, while coming in second would be the new class. Although the official game developers had only given a brief introduction of the new class, the strength of this new class was simply unbelievable. It was definitely the top pick for players who loved both melee and ranged battles. Growing impatient, White Knight and his group said their goodbyes to Shifeng and directly rushed towards the slums. However, before White Knight left, he also sent Shifeng a friend request. Through this trip to Titan City, Owl's relationship with Zero Wing had deepened further. After White Knight's group left, Bloodsucker's group also grew hesitant. Originally, they had planned to awe Zero Wing with their ability, making Zero Wing aware of the Raven Guild's power, so that they could negotiate from a stronger position later on. However, after seeing Zero Wing's performance today, Bloodsucker's confidence was severely shaken. It would have been fine if their party was inferior to Shifeng alone, yet the ones that surpassed them in damage dealing were not just 2 or 3 people. After such an unsightly performance, Bloodsucker would find it very difficult to negotiate for a higher price. However, he was also somewhat reluctant to settle for just 20%. If he returned to the guild with such a poor result, the upper echelon would no doubt hold him accountable for it. Had he known that Zero Wing's main force was actually this strong, he never would have chosen to have his party perform alongside Zero Wing's main force. After arriving at the reception room of Zero Wing's residence, the assassin Kirin could not help but look at Bloodsucker and ask, "Boss Blood, what should we do now?" As a member of Raven, he always held the guild in high esteem. He looked down on even super guilds. However, after witnessing Shifeng's horrific strength, for the first time ever, he felt an overwhelming sense of defeat. Before, they had confidently declared their strength to Shifeng. Now, however, they were nothing more than jokes. "I don't have any ideas either. Let's just contact the guild leader for now," Bloodsucker replied, shaking his head. If possible, he really wished he could stop his past self from speaking so boldly. At the very least, he wouldn't be at a complete loss for words right now. Chapter 948, Rapid Development. Hellscythe_VampireCat. Updated by Novelful. Calm. Due to the presence of the teleportation shop, a large number of players had gathered at White River City. In less than a day, White River City's player population skyrocketed past Starmoon cities, becoming the most populous city in Starmoon Kingdom. As soon as Shifeng returned to Zero Wing's residence, he received the statistics reports made by the guild members. These statistics drew on the latest information gathered from White River City's City Hall. Just recently, White River City's player population broke past 6 million. A large majority of the capital cities of the kingdoms in God's domain did not even possess such a large population. In reality, though, most of these newcomers had migrated from various cities in Starmoon Kingdom. Meanwhile, as a byproduct of the flood of players, the Candlelight trading firm's business flourished. Even the quality of the players Zero Wing recruited continued to rise. Originally, the guild had lowered its recruitment criteria significantly in consideration of its expansion plans towards the Black Dragon Empire and the Twin Towers Kingdom. However, with the player population of White River City skyrocketing, Zero Wing had no choice but to gradually raise its recruitment criteria again. Even so, Zero Wing still managed to recruit over 10,000 players in less than a day. Such a number might not be a lot to large guilds, but Zero Wing walked the path of the elite. The overall strength of these 10,000 new recruits could easily surpass the 50,000 new recruits of other guilds. Due to this sudden increase in members, Aqua Rose was swamped with work as soon as she returned to the residence. She needed to arrange these newcomers right away into parties and teams as well as assign them dungeons to raid. Unlike independent players, guild players could not raid dungeons as they wished. Their team members would also change frequently. Generally, Zero Wing's guild teams consisted of a mix of veterans and new members. Such a combination allowed newcomers to get their equipment up to standards and integrate themselves into the guild quickly. Having veteran members guiding newcomers also gave Aqua Rose a better grasp of the strengths and weaknesses of these newcomers. After gaining a sufficient understanding, she would then have to assign them to more appropriate teams. Guild leader, at our current recruitment rate, If we don't move some members to other cities soon, our guild members' levels will lag behind other first-rate guilds before long. Aqua Rose had a huge headache when she looked at the report in her hands. Due to the Abyss invasion, abyssal monsters now occupied many high-resource areas in Starmoon Kingdom. This situation had severely affected the leveling speed of Zero Wings guild members. The recruitment of so many players meant that leveling speed would become even slower. I understand. Start making the necessary arrangements to send 50,000 members to develop at the Black Dragon Empire's Lakeheart City. During this period, I'll try to have the guild residence at Lakeheart City constructed as quickly as possible. Once it's ready, they can use the guild transfer scroll to teleport there directly. Shi Feng also understood Zero Wing's current predicament. However, he also did not have a better solution. This was the problem with an upstart guild without any foundations. It was especially so for a guild that had developed as rapidly as Zero Wing had. Unlike other guilds that had already existed for several or even dozens of years, Zero Wing did not possess the luxury of starting its development in multiple cities. These long-established guilds could simply split a large and unexpected influx of new members among the various cities under their influence. Upon hearing Shi Feng's decision, Aqua Rose immediately started making the necessary preparations. It was going to be a huge job to decide which teams they would send over to the new branch guild. Seeing how busy Aqua Rose was, Shi Feng suddenly felt a little embarrassed. Although Zero Wing was gradually moving towards the top of God's domain, management of the entire guild depended mainly on Aqua Rose alone. Moreover, management of the guild involved the core secrets of the guild. He could not assign the job to some random person he did not trust. Although he wanted to help out, he was already bogged down with his own matters. Meanwhile, Fire Dance needed to manage the guild's main force, while Blackie had to deal with the matters of the workshop. Suddenly, Shi Feng discovered that he had nobody he could put to use. At this moment, the various flaws of an upstart guild were quickly coming to light. It seems that I'll need to find some trustworthy managers. Shi Feng had already considered this matter before. Although he had thought of having some of the core members manage the guild, none of them were particularly suited for the role. Moreover, all of them were busy improving themselves. After all, Zero Wing's internal competition was extremely intense. If one wanted to receive better treatment, they needed to earn it with their own strength. Anyhow, he had already set his sights on a suitable candidate. Liang Jing. During this period, he had occasionally let Liang Jing handle some matters relating to Zero Wing's workshop, and she always dealt with them excellently. She was much more amazing than even Shi Feng himself, someone who had served as the guild leader of a second-rate guild for many years. Not only was she knowledgeable, but she was also very efficient. Blackie would even often seek guidance from her on various problems. If he could have Liang Jing manage the guild, she would lighten Aqua Rose's burden as well. At the very least, Aqua Rose would not try to run away as soon as she saw him the way she did right now. However, there was one problem with having Liang Jing manage Zero Wing. Liang Jing was an employee of the Big Dipper Training Center. The guild's manager needed to be someone from Zero Wing. It seems I'll need to find time to have a chat with Liang Jing. When Shi Feng considered the guild's present situation as well as the problems that would crop up in the future, he felt an even greater need to poach Liang Jing. While experts were necessary for a guild to develop, managers were similarly important. Otherwise, it would simply be impossible to operate a guild with so many members. In truth, aside from Liang Jing, he had another candidate in mind. White Knight. White Knight was strong not only in combat but also leadership capability, if not stronger. When they were fighting against the demonic Ape King, he had led the members of the team as if they were his own arms and legs. Even Shi Feng had no choice but to admit defeat against him in that regard. In the past, under White Knight's management, Owl had gradually grown into one of the top adventurer teams in God's domain, an existence on par with the Midnight Tea Party. One could see just how capable White Knight was from this feat. If Shi Feng could recruit White Knight into Zero Wing would definitely rise by another level. However, Shi Feng could only take it slowly regarding White Knight's matter. In the past, White Knight had rejected even the offers of super guilds without hesitation. Zero Wing would not fare any better at the moment. After Shi Feng finished dealing with the various guild affairs, he hurried to the reception room of the residence. Sorry for the wait, Shi Feng apologized when he saw Bloodsucker, who had been waiting for him for quite some time now. It's fine. I've also just received instructions from our guild leader, Bloodsucker said. May I know if Elder Yi Feng has some time to spare right now? Time? Shi Feng stared at him, somewhat confused by this question. Before giving a reply, Bloodsucker took in a deep breath. In a very serious tone, he then said, "Our guild leader wishes to have a personal chat with you and hopes that you can come meet him." After reporting Zero Wing's information back to the guild, he had been shocked to hear that Raven's guild leader wanted to meet with Shi Feng. Kirin had also been surprised by this news. Less than 10 people in the entire Raven Guild had ever seen the guild leader's appearance before. Even Kirin himself had never personally met the guild leader, his conversations with the man limited to voice calls. However, just the means displayed by the guild leader so far had already inspired a worshipful mentality towards him and everyone in the guild. Hence, Kirin found it truly inconceivable that their guild leader was actually willing to meet personally with Shi Feng. Chapter 949, Entrance Token. Hellscythe_VampireCat. Updated by Novelful. Calm right now? Shi Feng asked, feeling somewhat curious as he looked at Bloodsucker. The guild leader of Raven, Bloodfang, was a mysterious existence in God's domain. Even in the past, Shi Feng had only heard of the man's name. He had never seen a picture of the man. Yet now, the high and mighty guild leader Bloodfang had suddenly asked to meet him. If this situation had happened in the past, it would definitely trigger a huge commotion. Yes. Our guild leader has said that some things cannot be expressed in words. It will be more convincing if you see them with your own eyes, Bloodsucker explained, nodding. Back when Bloodsucker heard guild leader Bloodfang's request to meet, he himself had been shocked. As a top-tier expert of the Raven Guild as well as an upper manager of Raven, he had only ever spoken with the mysterious guild leader of Raven through voice calls. To date he had never personally met the man. For an outsider like Shi Feng to actually receive an invitation to meet for a discussion, one could see just how much importance the guild leader placed on Zero Wing. This situation made even Bloodsucker envy Shi Feng slightly. Alright then. This reason is indeed tempting. Shi Feng was also very curious as to what Bloodfang wanted to show him. However, I still need to deal with some matters first before I can follow you all. It'll take me a few hours roughly to finish. No problem. Guild leader has already said that he is willing to wait for Elder Yifeng's visit. Bloodsucker unconsciously breathed out a sigh of relief when he heard Shi Feng agreeing to the meeting. The guild leader had already stated that he wanted to meet with Shi Feng no matter what. Moreover, the sooner the better. It would be best if they could meet before the match between the Azura battle team and the Evil Dragons battle team. Although he did not understand why guild leader Bloodfang was in such a hurry, he did not try to delve into the man's thoughts. Following which, Bloodsucker left Zero Wing's residence, intending to stroll around the city while waiting for Shi Feng to tie up his matters. Meanwhile, at the slums of White River City, the originally desolate streets of the area were currently packed with a sea of players. Well-equipped 100-man teams loitered everywhere, the members of these teams all wearing discontented expressions. Just how long are we supposed to wait? We've already been waiting for over half an hour here already. Half an hour? Our team has already been waiting for nearly an hour already. The various teams gazed helplessly at the simple house in the distance. While this house looked very simple, it contained the teleportation array that could send players straight to the heart of the Twin Towers Kingdom. However, the number of players this teleportation array could accommodate at a single time was limited, while the number of players wishing to earn honor points was a lot. Before long, the queue to use the teleportation array had already meandered through several streets. Among the teams waiting to use the teleportation array, a beautiful woman riding atop a black panther looked towards the level 39 female assassin who had just run up to her, and asked, "Frozen, what did you manage to find out?" This black panther was over 2 meters tall and looked just like a large-scale jeep. It was a very eye-catching sight on the street. However, compared to this black panther, its owner commanded even more respect. The beauty riding atop the Black Panther was none other than the vice guild leader of the 100 Flowers Palace, Cleansed Rue. I've already checked everything. All nearby lands suitable for constructing a guild residence have already been bought by someone. In addition, the few strategic locations that can be used to set up a store have similarly been bought by someone, the assassin named Frozen Pearl reported softly. These people sure move quickly. Have you found out who bought them? Cleansed Rue frowned slightly. After receiving news of this teleportation shop, she had immediately gathered a team and hurried over. She had even prepared a large sum of money to construct a guild residence in White River City. This way their guild members would not have to waste money on exorbitant teleportation fees and could simply teleport to White River City using the guild transfer scroll. The new class would be very beneficial to their guild in future struggles. Hence, they need to nurture a large number of this new class. Moreover, aside from exchanging for a new class, honor points also had other uses. There were only benefits to be had from grinding abyssal monsters. The only problem was the teleportation fee. The Dark Knight Empire where their guild was based was somewhat distant from Starmoon Kingdom. They had spent several hundred gold just to transport 300 players to White River City. If their guild were to send thousands of players over, the expenditure would definitely reach frightening proportions. Nevertheless, if their guild wished to have an advantage at the Twin Towers Kingdom, it was naturally better to send as many members over as possible. Hence, it was imperative for them to establish a guild residence in White River City. I have yet to find out. The buyers have all kept their identities hidden, Frozen Pearl replied, shaking her head. They've hidden their identities? Cleansed Rue smiled. Send some people to these locations to leave a message saying that our 100 Flowers Palace sincerely wishes to purchase guild residence land and that we hope they can contact us. If there are any movements from those landowners, notify me immediately. Generally speaking, any guild that managed to secure these lands would be more than eager to boast about their successful acquisitions. They definitely would not conceal it. Since the owners of these lands chose to keep their identities a secret, that meant that they had purchased these lands not for personal use but for resale. Their silence also showed that they were still waiting for the right price. Although Cleansed Rue did not know who would possess such great insight to actually discern the value of these lands so quickly, she had no intention of wasting time waiting for these landowners to sell these lands. Currently, the sooner they obtained nearby guild land, the sooner they would be able to dispatch more guild members to the Twin Towers Kingdom. Even if the price was astronomical, she needed to purchase the land as expeditiously as possible. Understood. Frozen Pearl nodded. She then led her subordinates to the nearby lands that were suitable for constructing a guild residence. Inside one of the basic meditation rooms of the Candlelight trading firm, all intermediate and advanced lifestyle players of the firm were currently gathered. Several hundred players were present in the room. These players made up a large portion of the intermediate and advanced lifestyle players in the entire Starmoon Kingdom. This was especially true for the advanced lifestyle players. Nowadays, the various large guilds throughout God's domain were placing more and more importance on lifestyle players. Currently, the treatment an advanced lifestyle player received was already on the level of core members. At this moment, however, all these advanced lifestyle players were quietly seated at one side, all of them unconsciously holding their breaths as they looked with yearning at the black iron tokens placed on the table. These tokens were none other than the entrance tokens Shifeng had obtained from Titan City. Chapter 950. Competition between trading firms. Hellscythe_VampireCat. Chapter 950. Competition between trading firms. I've already explained the purpose of these Titan City entrance tokens, Shifeng said as he toyed with the entrance token in his hand. He then took a look at the crowd before him, feeling very satisfied with the eagerness they all displayed. So, what will your decisions be? He had sacrificed plenty in order to obtain these entrance tokens. He had used even his most treasured Tier 4 magic scroll. In the past, each Titan City entrance token had sold for over 300 gold at auction, the token's price sometimes reaching even 600 gold. It was not something ordinary players could afford. Moreover, even if they managed to obtain it, they still needed sufficient funds for expenditures in Titan City. Otherwise, there would be no point in visiting the Holy City. Generally, large guilds were willing to purchase the entrance tokens for a high price only if they were trying to get an advanced lifestyle player to the master rank or have some lifestyle master produce a new creation. Sending lifestyle players of intermediate rank and below to the Holy City would just be a colossal waste. However, Shifeng couldn't care less now. It was simply impossible for current lifestyle players to reach the master rank. Even with the aid of the research room, there was no way a forging genius like Cream Coco could become a master forger within a short time. Achieving the master rank required all lifestyle classes to produce original creations. To do so, one needed extensive knowledge of all sorts of materials. The glimmer chestplate Shifeng had managed to create early on was merely the result of dumb luck. If he had to create a new piece of equipment right now, the likelihood of success was practically nil. Just creating the bronze-ranked glimmer chestplate was already a miracle. Not to mention, the quality of the items one needed to produce to become a master was much higher. To become a master forger, aside from needing a ton of forging proficiency, one also needed to create 3 mysterious iron items and 1 secret silver item. Hence, the number of players who could successfully become a lifestyle master was extremely low, less than 1 out of 100 advanced lifestyle players. It was precisely because of this reason that the holy city of Titan had become holy ground for lifestyle players in the past. Countless advanced lifestyle players dreamed of entering the holy city to further their careers. The various large guilds also tried to purchase the entrance tokens at all costs. Anyone who managed to become a lifestyle master would become a core component of the trading firm they belonged to. After all, lifestyle masters could produce items unique to themselves. Moreover, one's success at becoming a master also proved that their research into the various materials related to their class had already reached a certain level. In the future, they would have a much easier time producing new items and thus plenty of opportunities to make money. Hence, the various large guilds had treated master rank players with great respect. Well? Melancholic smile urged in a stern tone as she looked at the lifestyle players before her. Tapping the contract placed on the table, she continued, "If you wish to improve yourselves further, you'll have to sign this contract. Otherwise, the trading firm definitely will not give this precious opportunity to you. But if we sign this contract, it'll be equivalent to us selling ourselves to Candlelight. We won't have any chances to leave Candlelight at all in the future. Moreover, you are even requiring us to go full-time. We need some time to consider this matter properly." A few intermediate lifestyle players voiced their opinions. In their eyes, God's domain was only a game. If they fully dedicated their lives to God's domain, who would guarantee that they wouldn't starve to death in the future? In addition, the conditions listed in the contract were extremely demanding. The contract barred its signatories from working elsewhere within the next decade. They wouldn't even be able to delete their accounts and start all over again. As this was a system-enforced contract, unless they decided to stop playing God's domain altogether, there was no escaping these conditions. Moreover, even if they chose to work elsewhere a decade later, they needed to first delete their accounts before doing so. I won't force you. However, you all must understand that it was extremely difficult to obtain these tokens. If you spend only half a day's time in God's domain, you will simply be wasting these tokens. Not to mention, if you suddenly decide to just up and leave later on, wouldn't all those resources I have invested into you go to waste? You all should know that any resource capable of helping you further advance your skills is priceless in God's domain. There might not be another opportunity after it is used up. The contract already states very clearly that after you go full-time, you will enjoy benefits equivalent to the core members of Zero Wing. Aside from a monthly salary of 10,000 credits, you will also receive commissions for the items you produce. I believe that you all aren't signing this contract just for that little bit of income, right? You should know very well that the treatment offered by Candlelight is also at the very top of the industry. I am a busy person. 10 minutes. I will only give you all 10 minutes to consider. Shifeng also understood the concerns these people had. Even so, they still had to sign the contract if they wanted to receive the opportunity to visit Titan City. Moreover, he had already presented them with very generous conditions. The offers of other guilds simply could not compare to the resources he could provide. If the advanced lifestyle players of other guilds had a 1% chance of becoming a master, then those on his side had a 5% chance at the very least. In the past, as Shadow was a small guild, it had not placed a lot of restrictive conditions on the advanced lifestyle players it hired. In the end, after investing a large quantity of resources into these people, those who managed to become masters simply up and left for other guilds, and there was nothing Shadow could do to stop them from leaving. There were just too many headhunters in God's domain. As the importance of lifestyle players grew, the conditions offered by these poachers would likewise improve. Nobody could guarantee that these lifestyle players would not fall prey to the temptations. Moreover, based on the investigations he had asked Aqua Rose to carry out, quite a few advanced lifestyle players of the Candlelight trading firm had already received overtures from headhunters. He did not wish to risk such an important matter on the morality of these lifestyle players. Right. I forgot to mention this before, but not everyone present will be qualified to sign the contract. You'll have to look for Melancholic and take a test first, Shifeng said as he looked at the silent advanced lifestyle players. Also, you lot aren't the only ones allowed to take the test. Melancholic, notify everyone in the trading firm. Tell them that, as long as they pass the test and sign the contract, they will have the qualifications to use the meditation room in the future. Other guilds might have difficulty nurturing advanced lifestyle players, but to the Candlelight trading firm, This was an easy feat to accomplish. Other guilds might find advanced lifestyle players rare, but not him. The intermediate lifestyle players of other guilds would have long since reached the advanced rank had they joined the Candlelight trading firm. After all, the Candlelight trading firm was the first to possess special workshops. The trading firm also had a large number of rare designs. If these people weren't willing to sign the contract, he would rather place his resources on lower-ranked lifestyle players. Chapter 951, Super First-Rate Forger. Hellscythe_VampireCat. Chapter 951, Super First-Rate Forger. While Sherfone was holding a meeting with the lifestyle players of the Candlelight trading firm, Heaven's Burial was also having a meeting at Starmoon City. Among the participants of the meeting were several middle-aged people dressed in plain clothing, aside from a large group of well-equipped expert players. The levels of these middle-aged people were only in the low 30s. The aura that combat experts usually exuded was also absent from these people. On the contrary, they gave off a dull and strict feeling. However, nobody present in the venue looked down on these people. Rather, everyone looked at them with deep reverence. Uncle Seven, you are simply too amazing. I never thought that you would actually manage to recruit these people, the cleric Flameblood said in admiration as he looked at the middle-aged man named Seven Treasures. With this, our guild will definitely rise rapidly. You're giving me too much credit. I simply followed the guild leader's orders to bring them here. Seven Treasures chuckled as he waved his hand. It was guild leader who managed to persuade them? I heard that these people had rejected even the invitations of super guilds, Flameblood said, a look of surprise appearing on his face. While he had known that Singular Burial had been secretly trying to poach the advanced lifestyle players of various guilds before, he had considered it a futile effort. Currently, advanced lifestyle players were like treasures to any guild. Not only did they receive excellent benefits, but they were also subject to a series of restrictive conditions binding them to their respective guilds. These players would not easily defect to Heaven's Burial. However, after seeing these few middle-aged men and women sitting before him, he now realized he had assumed wrong. The virtual gaming world had developed for over 100 years already. Aside from well-known experts and super guilds leaving their names behind in the annals of history, there were also plenty of amazing lifestyle players. These people had relied on lifestyle classes to become famous in the virtual gaming world, and their fame was not one bit inferior to that of top-tier experts. Although there would be some differences between the lifestyle classes of different virtual reality games, those capable of domination in a virtual reality game would perform mainly the same even if they switched to a different game. Aside from that, the middle-aged men and women present were among the best lifestyle players in multiple virtual reality games, and any professional gamer who walked the path of lifestyle classes would know of them. Now that lifestyle classes were becoming increasingly important in God's domain, these several masters had become even more difficult to hire than top-tier experts, yet Heaven's Burial had managed to recruit these people. With them aboard, Flameblood was certain of one thing. From today onwards, things were going to change in Starmoon Kingdom. The Candlelight trading firm, which had remained the dominant trading firm within the kingdom all this time, would soon be history. Heaven's Burial had an abundance of capital. In addition, they also had a steady source of magic crystals. Just the number of cities the Heavenly trading firm covered right now already surpassed the Candlelight trading firms greatly. Currently, it was only lacking in advanced lifestyle players and popular exclusive products when compared to Candlelight. Once the Heavenly trading firm dealt with these problems, becoming the #1 trading firm in Starmoon Kingdom would be a piece of cake. Daybreak, how is the progress of the quest on your side? Asked Singular Burial, who was seated on the guild leader's throne. We're almost done. At most, we'll need another 2 days' time to obtain the shop promotion order, Daybreak Fog said confidently. Good. As long as we obtain this promotion order, the Heavenly trading firm will be able to secure its foothold in Starmoon Kingdom. When the time comes, we'll be relying on you several masters, Singular Burial said, turning to look at the middle-aged men and women seated at a corner. As long as you accomplish what you've promised, we naturally won't disappoint you, the bespectacled middle-aged man seated in the lead of the group said very casually. At that time, not only will the Heavenly trading firm become the #1 trading firm in Starmoon Kingdom, but it will also become the #1 in the Black Dragon Empire and the surrounding countries. Although the words of the man sounded very arrogant, nobody present doubted his words. After all, this man was the super first-rate forger, Lava Heart, someone known as the forging lecturer in the virtual gaming world. In the real world, he was even a famous blacksmith who specialized in producing all sorts of weapons and defensive equipment for bigwigs and martial arts masters. Please rest assured on this point. I am a man of my word, Singular Burial laughed. Inside the Candlelight trading firm. After Shifeng was done stating his demands, the intermediate lifestyle players, who had initially been hesitant to make a decision, started applying to take the test one after another. The basic meditation room was simply too tempting. Despite having entered the meditation room for only a short time, they could already clearly feel the benefits it provided. The mana released into the room allowed them to maintain their calm. Their concentration while inside this room was significantly better. Any player that produced items would know just how important concentration was. After the fourth evolution of God's domain, the procedures to manufacture items had become increasingly complex. The lack of fine control over one's movements when producing an item would easily result in failure. Meanwhile, having high concentration could allow players to carry out these fine movements with ease. The meditation room would definitely be able to help them further improve themselves. Are you guys really going to agree to these conditions? An advanced alchemist named Flying Fish could not help but ask as he looked at his fellow advanced lifestyle players. I believe that you guys should have received invitations from Heaven's Burial as well. The conditions they are offering are triple those of Candlelight's. Moreover, they've also promised to assign an exclusive special workshop to each of us in the future. We'll even get priority over choosing rare designs and recipes. We'll have a much better time there than at Candlelight. Why don't we all just move to Heaven's Burial's heavenly trading firm? Although the treatment Heaven's Burial is offering is indeed good, we get to learn extremely rare designs at the Candlelight trading firm. Moreover, there's even the basic meditation room available now. Not to mention, if we move to the heavenly trading firm, we'll have to start over from scratch, an advanced lifestyle player replied worriedly. What's there to worry about? Even if we start a new account, the technical skills we've accumulated will stay with us. Moreover, rare designs and recipes are becoming increasingly abundant. We'll be able to regain our lost development very quickly. Also, you shouldn't forget that the heavenly trading firm also has those several masters. Compared to fumbling around in the dark, our chances of reaching the master rank will improve significantly if we follow in their footsteps, Flying Fish said, yearning stirring in his heart when he mentioned those masters. The only reason the Candlelight trading firm could become as strong as it was now was the rare designs it had managed to obtain early on. However, after the fourth evolution of God's domain, the difficulty of making items had increased significantly. It would be very difficult for them to improve further by relying on external factors. If they could receive the guidance of those several masters hired by the heavenly trading firm, their chances of becoming true lifestyle masters would be much higher than if they continued staying at the Candlelight trading firm. Burning, why don't you follow me as well? With those masters guiding us, I believe that you'll be able to become a lifestyle master very quickly. At that time, you might even get to join the upper echelons of Heaven's Burial, Flying Fish urged the tall and thin youth standing beside him. Burning Abyss had entered the Candlelight trading firm just recently. Back then he had only been an advanced apprentice. However, due to his great talent he quickly managed to become an advanced engineer. In contrast, Flying Fish became an advanced alchemist only after striving for a long time. However, Burning Abyss shook his head in reply. Usually, aside from making items inside his workshop, the thing he liked doing the most was reading in libraries. In addition, he would also take a look at the information gathered by Zero Wing. From reading the gathered information, he had obtained many secrets that others did not know about, which was also one of the reasons why he had managed to improve so quickly in engineering. Previously, when he saw Shifeng take out the Titan City entrance tokens, his legs had nearly gone limp from shock. Although Shifeng had kept his explanation of the function of the entrance tokens brief, only stating that those who use it would get to train in special workshops as well as learn some rare designs and recipes, Burning Abyss knew exactly what kind of place the holy city of Titan was. That was a place known as the Holy Land. Titan City even had the research rooms that all lifestyle masters dreamed of entering. The help the research materials there could provide was many times more accurate and detailed than any guidance from a bunch of players. Are you really planning to defect to the heavenly trading firm? Burning Abyss asked seriously as he looked at Flying Fish. Of course, Flying Fish replied in a determined tone. At Flying Fish's reply, Burning Abyss could not help but sigh as he said, I advise you not to go. If you defect to the heavenly trading firm, you will definitely regret your decision today. Chapter 952, Immense Wealth. Hellscythe_Vampire Cat. Chapter 952, Immense Wealth. Burning, you sure know how to joke. Burning, you can't be reluctant to part with the meditation room, right? Although the basic meditation room is indeed good, there are too many advanced lifestyle players in the trading firm. We'll have to wait for a long time before our turn to use it comes. Not to mention, the meditation room simply provides very little assistance in getting us promoted to the master rank, compared to the guidance provided by those top-tier lifestyle experts. Also, rather than the current situation where super guilds look down on us, once we become masters, super guilds will beg us to join them. When the surrounding lifestyle players heard Burning Abyss's words, they could not help but start laughing. Lifestyle classes were different from combat classes. The aid that external factors could provide lifestyle players was limited. One had to rely mainly on their own techniques and experience to perform well. Meanwhile, these things required frequent practice. During the early stages of the game, the external conditions provided by the Candlelight trading firm were indeed much better compared to those of super guilds. However, the aid from these external factors stopped when a player reached the advanced rank. This was also the reason why super guilds thought little of advanced lifestyle players. After all, players relied on an abundance of resources to obtain that rank. It was a different story for lifestyle players who had reached the master rank, which was not achievable through resources alone. Burning, if you don't want to leave, so be it. Is there a need to try and scare us into staying as well? Flying Fish's expression darkened. Although he did not think that Burning Abyss's words would come true, he still felt displeased after hearing them. Regret leaving the Candlelight trading firm? He refused to believe that the basic meditation room could compete with guidance from those several masters. Moreover, he would receive much more attention and better treatment at the Heavenly trading firm. With those several masters present, it was only a matter of time before the Heavenly trading firm became the #1 trading firm in Star Moon Kingdom. Suit yourself. After saying so, Burning Abyss walked towards Melancholic Smile to apply for the test. The only reason he had cautioned Flying Fish was the good relationship they usually had. The Titan City entrance tokens were extremely limited. In order to nurture talents, the guild would no doubt prioritize sending intermediate lifestyle players to Titan City. The number of slots reserved for advanced lifestyle players would definitely be very few. If Flying Fish and the other advanced lifestyle players left, he would have a much better chance of getting selected to visit the Holy City. Guild Leader, just like you've speculated, 4 advanced classes and over 20 intermediate classes are requesting the termination of their contracts with us, Melancholic Smile said as she handed a stack of withdrawal applications to Shifeng. Frowning slightly, she asked, Guild Leader, are we really going to let them go? Currently, the Candlelight trading firm had a dearth of advanced lifestyle players. If they let these people go now, it would only serve to undermine the trading firm's competitiveness. Don't worry about it. Candlelight's future has no need for these people. Shifeng chuckled. If they wish to terminate their contracts and gift us money, I very much welcome them to do so. Zero Wings Workshop had recently recruited a large number of people and required money urgently. Since other guilds were willing to pay to poach these lifestyle players, he was more than happy to oblige them. Upon hearing Shifeng's words, Melancholic Smile could not help but fall speechless. Other trading firms were selling products to earn money, yet Shifeng was actually selling lifestyle players to earn money. However, this was also a good outcome. To begin with, those lifestyle players never had any intention of staying at Candlelight over the long run. Now, not only could they rid themselves of these leeches, but they could also make a huge profit off the termination fee while they were at it. Right, how are things on the teleportation house's side? Shifeng asked quietly. Based on the test I conducted, each individual needs roughly 1/5 of a magic crystal's energy to teleport from White River City to the Twin Towers Kingdom. Hence, I set the teleportation fee for White River City at 20 silver per person. The profits we've made so far already exceeds what the entire Candlelight trading firm makes in a day by a considerable margin, Melancholic Smile answered, great joy brightening her face when she spoke about the teleportation house. The Candlelight trading firm was the #1 trading firm in Star Moon Kingdom. The coins it earned in a day could make even first-rate guilds drool. Even so, the trading firm's income still paled significantly in comparison to that of the teleportation house. Deducting the daily management fees of the several NPCs as well as the cost of the magic crystals used to fuel the teleportation array, the teleportation house had already earned over 2,000 gold after just a few hours of operation. Unfortunately, the amount of magic crystals they could obtain through the guild and purchasing from others was limited. They couldn't provide players with unrestricted use of the teleportation array. Even so, based on Melancholic Smile's calculations, they could still make a clean profit of around 5,000 gold every day. This was several times the income of the Candlelight trading firm. If super guilds were to learn of Zero Wing's daily income, they would definitely take action against Zero Wing regardless of the cost. After hearing Melancholic Smile's report, even Shi Feng was surprised. Although he had expected the teleportation house to be extremely profitable, he never thought it would be this profitable. If not for the limited supply of magic crystals, this amount would most likely be several times higher. It was no wonder so many people had gone crazy over the ancient abyssal books in the past. It seems magic crystals will always remain a problem. The amount we can obtain by relying on just Stone Forest Town and purchases is simply too little. Shi Feng started pondering methods to earn large amounts of magic crystals in God's domain. As players progressed further into the game, the amount of magic crystals they required would also increase. However, the sources of magic crystals in God's domain were just too few. Currently, aside from dungeons and certain hidden locations, the only other method to obtain a large amount of magic crystals was through mining magic crystal veins. However, the standard of current God's domain players made it utterly impossible for them to go to that kind of place. Sometime later, the results of those who applied to take the test inside the meditation room came out. Based on the ranks of each class, Shi Feng chose 50 players with the highest production success rates. Among these 50 players, only 5 were advanced lifestyle players, while 20 were intermediate lifestyle players, and 25 were basic lifestyle players. The reason he had decided on such a distribution was his wish to nurture a large number of advanced lifestyle players. He had no plans of having the advanced players strive for the master rank at the moment. Moreover, even if Shi Feng wanted to, the current advanced lifestyle players were simply incapable of doing so. As for Cream Coco's group of advanced classes, who wielded the core secrets of the guild, Shi Feng would use the Holy City's emblem to transport them over. If he had them working in the special workshops of Titan City, they would be able to produce the mounts and strengthening devices slightly faster. The Holy City's emblem could open a transfer gate to Titan City and allow up to 10 people to pass through it. However, the emblem had a cooldown of 7 days. Although it was not as convenient as the entrance tokens which did not possess a cooldown, it was valuable in the fact that it was reusable. It could continuously send the lifestyle players of the Candlelight trading firm to Titan City. After everyone had teleported to Titan City, Shi Feng silently departed the trading firm. This is the Holy City of Titan. Originally, everyone had been extremely excited over the fact that they were going to get to have their own exclusive special workshop as well as learn rare designs and recipes. However, upon entering Titan City, they were utterly shocked by the scenery of Titan City. Chapter 953, Holy Space. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Inside Heaven's Burial's residence in Starmoon City. Guild Leader, I've just been notified that those 4 advanced lifestyle players from Candlelight have agreed to our conditions. Moreover, Candlelight isn't forcing them to stay. As long as we send the money, they'll let those 4 go, Flame Blood reported excitedly upon receiving the news. Advanced lifestyle players were currently a rare commodity to any guild. They were precious resources for guilds in the war over market dominance. Hence, the various guilds held onto their lifestyle players tightly, preventing other guilds from poaching. If a guild wanted advanced lifestyle players, it would have to start by nurturing complete novices. However, doing so was time-consuming, and it would be very hard for a trading firm to gain a competitive edge in a short time. Hence, Singular Burial had used those several masters and offered irresistible benefits. Flame Blood had not expected Singular Burial's strategy to be effective enough to poach 4 advanced lifestyle players. This would significantly weaken the Candlelight trading firm. Moreover, even though these advanced lifestyle players' proficiency had been reset and they had lost the designs and recipes they had learned, they still retained their experience and technical skills. With Heaven's Burial's resources, it would not take long for these players to recover the losses. This was far more cost-efficient than simply nurturing advanced lifestyle players from scratch. Black Flame really is quite interesting. While other guilds are keeping a tight leash on their advanced lifestyle players, he generously allowed 4 to walk away. It seems he is relatively confident in the Candlelight trading firm. The corners of Singular Burial's mouth twitched when he heard this news, and he could not help but admire Shi Feng. They were talking about 4 advanced lifestyle players. After investing plenty of resources into its trading firm, Heaven's Burial had only nurtured 5 advanced lifestyle players thus far. Among them, 3 had only recently achieved their promotion. Yet, the Candlelight trading firm had abandoned 4 such individuals without hesitation. Guild leader, will these players be a problem? Daybreak Fog asked worriedly from the side. They shouldn't be. I spoke with all of them in secret earlier. Their item production techniques and success rates are genuine, Singular Burial said, shaking his head. Chuckling, he continued, since Candlelight is so generous, we don't need to be courteous with them. Uncle Seven, deal with this matter right away. We can't let another guild steal these people from us. With these 4 advanced lifestyle players and the 5 masters in the Heavenly Trading Firm, it wouldn't be long before the position of Starmoon Kingdom's top trading firm switched owners. Once the Heavenly Trading Firm surpassed the Candlelight Trading Firm, Heaven's Burial would have a stable source of income. At that time, Heaven's Burial could officially begin its conquest of Starmoon Kingdom. Guild leader, rest assured, I'll head over right away, Seven Treasures said. He immediately departed the meeting room and dashed towards Starmoon City's teleportation hall. On the streets of Titan City, the city's dense mana-intoxicated Melancholic Smile and her companions. The mana density in this city is even higher than the basic meditation room. Melancholic Smile grew breathless when she felt the city's mana. Although the difference in mana between the basic meditation room and the special workshop seemed small, it was precisely this small difference that made it far easier for intermediate lifestyle players to reach the advanced rank. Lifestyle players gained proficiency in a slightly different way from combat players who only needed to gain EXP by killing monsters. Take intermediate forgers who were trying to become advanced forgers, for example. When their forging proficiency reached a certain degree, even if they only produced ordinary items befitting their rank, they would not gain any forging proficiency. They would have to produce rare items befitting their rank to raise their proficiency. Soon, even rare items would not provide any proficiency, at which point intermediate forgers would have to produce items that were 1 rank higher to improve. One could just imagine how abysmal an intermediate forger's success rate with producing advanced items would be. If one could not complete the forging procedures flawlessly, they would waste an astonishing amount of materials. Moreover, intermediate forgers would be producing advanced merchandise, which required rare materials. Even super guilds would not waste their rare materials so recklessly. Guilds mainly nurtured lifestyle players to make money. Although they would have to invest, this investment was not limitless. There was definitely a cap. In the Candlelight trading firm, rare materials were extremely limited. The trading firm did not have the leeway for everyone to produce higher-rank merchandise limitlessly. Hence, the trading firm would conduct a quality check every now and then, using the opportunity to determine how many rare materials to allocate to each person. Those with high production success rates received a larger supply of rare materials. This way they could gain more proficiency each day, increasing their promotion speed. This was precisely the reason that the basic meditation room's mana density was extremely important. The dense mana in the air could allow players to maintain a calm mind and high concentration. This way they wouldn't make errors as easily when crafting. If they could cut down on unnecessary mistakes, their production success rate would increase. Their promotion speed would also increase. This was why the various large guilds were more willing to pay a huge price to poach advanced lifestyle players rather than nurture their own. Following which, Melancholic Smile led everyone to the Titan Lifestyle Association. As Feng had requested, she rented special workshops for everyone for 3 days. Including the cost to purchase designs and recipes, she had spent over 4,000 gold. This expenditure dumbfounded Cream Cocoa and the others. Even first-rate guilds would be hard-pressed to collect more than 4,000 gold. None of them had ever imagined that the trading firm would spend so much on them. They finally understood why the trading firm had required them to sign such a strict contract. In fact, if not for the money earned through the teleportation house, even Melancholic Smile's heart would have stopped by now. Coming here to raise one's proficiency and techniques was the epitome of luxury. However, upon entering the Lifestyle Association's special workshop, her opinion changed. Although the workshop here was only half the size of the Candlelight trading firm's special workshops, the mana density was 3 times that of the outside world. Inside this room, she experienced a mental clarity like never before. Updated by Novelful.com. Moreover, aside from its high mana density, there was a large amount of research materials available inside this special workshop. After a cursory search for information on the strengthening device, Melancholic Smile compiled a few dozen pages of information. Among them were production videos from master forgers and key crafting points. Master-ranked production videos? Melancholic Smile clicked on the video out of curiosity. Chapter 954, New World. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. The moment Melancholic Smile clicked on one of the master's production videos, a tall, robust figure appeared inside the room, which was the size of a basketball court. The man had tan skin and a long beard. What? This is a hologram? Melancholic Smile was shocked when she saw the bearded man. While there were production videos of many capable individuals on God's Domain's official forums, one could only watch them on a flat screen. At the end of the day, one could not experience their production process. Moreover, compared to this holographic master forger's techniques, every forging player throughout God's Domain was practically garbage. A master forger is impressive. So, I can use this method to forge the strengthening devices as well. After watching the holographic video once, Melancholic Smile was aware of her flaws. Particularly, her rune drawing techniques needed work. The bearded man's rune looked natural on the strengthening device. Moreover, he completed the rune with one smooth motion. The original strengthening device design only offered a simple introduction and a few basic demonstrations. It did not contain any forging techniques to speak of. Melancholic Smile had no choice but to experiment. After watching the Master Forger's video, Melancholic Smile felt as if doors to a whole new world had opened for her. If this is what the videos are like, what are the key production points? After calming herself, Melancholic Smile shifted her attention towards the key points of production, clicking on one of the several available links. As soon as Melancholic Smile clicked on it, she heard a system notification. System, production annotation mode activated. Energy is required to activate this mode. Magic crystals. One magic crystal will last 1 hour. Do you wish to continue? It even needs magic crystals? Melancholic Smile could not help her surprise. The Master Forger's holographic video had not required any payment. Seeing as energy was required to annotate the key points of production, this function should be far more valuable than the videos. Melancholic Smile did not take long to consider her options. As she had come to produce strengthening devices, she had plenty of magic crystals on hand. Wasting one wouldn't matter. Following which, Melancholic Smile clicked, accept, and a single magic crystal disappeared from her bag. System, production annotation mode activated. Loading strengthening device template number 017. You may now produce the strengthening device. That's it. Melancholic Smile had not noticed anything different about herself, and nothing new had appeared in the room. However, since the system had said as much, she decided to start forging the strengthening device. In any case, Shifeng had stated that they needed to produce a large quantity of strengthening devices as quickly as possible. As Melancholic Smile took out the necessary materials and prepared to smelt them, various images and data appeared before her. The information consisted of semi-transparent holograms and wouldn't affect her production directly. When Melancholic Smile looked through the images and data, she was shocked. After all, this information guided her through producing the strengthening device. All she needed to do was overlay her actions with the holographic images and observe the smelting process. The data displayed also provided specific hints for carrying out these actions. The production annotation mode was like a copybook that provided ideal forging procedures, and all she needed to do was familiarize herself with these procedures. Learning how to forge the strengthening device this way was many times more effective than simply watching a master forger at work. As Melancholic Smile forged the strengthening devices according to the hints provided, her forging success rate and speed steadily rose. Originally, Melancholic Smile's success rate with the strengthening device had been around 40%. After using the intermediate mana source, her success rate increased to roughly 50%. However, she rarely achieved a 50% success rate when actually crafting them. Before arriving in Titan City, she usually succeeded 4 of 10 tries and sometimes less. After an hour inside the special workshop, however, she could now stabilize her output to 4 or more out of 10 tries. Many of her uncertainties when forging the strengthening device had also vanished, and now her actions were more decisive. This resulted in a faster forging speed. She was practically as fast as she had been before God's Domain's 4th evolution. She was overjoyed. With the videos of the master forgers and the key production points, her forging techniques improved with each second she spent in the room. Her growth was at least 10 times faster than when she had been in the Candlelight trading firm's basic meditation room. Melancholic Smile felt that the 4,000 plus gold they spent was worth it. After such a short time here, she was confident of trying for the master rank. As for the firm's other lifestyle players, rising from basic or intermediate rank to advanced would be a piece of cake. Melancholic Smile wasn't the only one excited about Titan City's special workshops. All those who experienced the special workshops instantly fell in love. Everyone felt that, if they could stay here, they could easily become masters. Unfortunately, this was only a misconception. After all, techniques and high success rates were not the only requirements to become a master. One also needed extensive knowledge of materials. Without sufficient knowledge, creating an item of their own would be impossible. If Flying Fish and the others knew about this, they'd go mad. Burning Abyss, who resided in his own special workshop, could not help but sigh when he thought of Flying Fish and the other advanced lifestyle players. Before coming to Titan City, although he had known that the city was the holy land for lifestyle players, he had not expected it to be this amazing. Titan City definitely deserved to be called a holy land. It now seemed that, in his search of a shortcut to become a master, Flying Fish had suffered a huge setback. Even if those several masters were extremely skilled in other virtual reality games, at the end of the day, those games were not God's domain. How could those masters' guidance possibly compare to God's domain's true masters? Furthermore, there were the research rooms. Starmoon Kingdom, White River City's teleportation hall. Due to the new teleportation house, large groups of players flooded into White River City. Among them, a majority consisted of guild players. Only a small minority were independent players. After Shifeng finished sorting out his matters, he arranged to meet with Bloodsucker and the others at the teleportation hall. When Shifeng discovered Bloodsucker among the crowd, he also noticed an unfamiliar man beside Bloodsucker. The other party noticed him as well. Although this man hid his appearance with a black cloak, Shifeng felt his piercing gaze. It was the gaze of a predator. Shifeng was not comfortable being its target. Meanwhile, Bloodsucker and the others obviously treated this man with great respect. Kirin and Masked Angel, who stood beside the man, did not even dare to breathe loudly. Updated by Novelful.com. You must be Yi Feng, right? The unfamiliar man said after looking at Shifeng. Coldly, he continued, before you meet our guild leader, the guild leader has said that he wants to show you something. Show me what? Shifeng asked curiously. Strength. The man laughed. Chapter 955, Raven's Background. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. After the unfamiliar man spoke, he shifted his gaze towards Bloodsucker. Blood, follow me. Everyone else returned to the guild. Kirin and the others nodded to the man's commanding tone, reverence filling their eyes when looked at him. This surprised Shifeng. During the entrance trial, Shifeng had discovered that Kirin was a Void Realm expert. Throughout Zero Wing, only he could trump over the assassin. Both Fire Dance and Violet Cloud were still weaker than him in terms of combat standards. Though, if it came to an actual fight, Fire Dance would defeat Kirin easily as the difference between their equipment was massive. Regardless, with Kirin's combat standards, he would be an apex expert in any guild. Yet, the unfamiliar man had clearly expressed that they were heading somewhere where an expert of Kirin's caliber wasn't qualified to be. Among the party, only Bloodsucker was allowed to accompany them. Brother Blood, where are we going? Shifeng sent Bloodsucker a private message. He was very curious about their destination. I don't know. This is only my third time meeting one of the guild leader's dark guards. Although he was a part of Raven's upper management, he was not qualified to meddle with Raven's core. In addition, Raven's internal affairs were kept hidden. As a dark guild, Raven did not prioritize killing monsters or developing cities. Instead, dark guilds killed players and plundered cities for a living, and everything they did demanded secrecy. After all, NPCs desperately wanted to eliminate them. Hence, even an upper manager like Bloodsucker knew very little about the Raven Guild. He was only responsible for managing his area's bounties. As for the guild's core secrets, he knew nothing. The Dark Guards were the guild leader's trusted aides. Everyone possessed extremely high combat standards, even he admired them. The guild leader almost never revealed himself during his various tasks. He even left crucial matters for his Dark Guards to handle. A Dark Guard? Shifeng glanced at the cloaked man, shocked. He had heard about Raven's dark guards before. Raven had become one of the 6 great dark guilds in God's domain due to its dark guards. These dark guards possessed inhuman combat standards. There were also many of them. Moreover, as they constantly covered themselves with black cloaks, nobody outside of Raven knew of their identities. Initially, many people had wondered if a super guild had established Raven. However, facts had proven that Raven was not related to any super guild in God's domain. Every super guild in God's domain had been under the care of Raven's dark guards at some point. Despite the dark guards robbing them of many riches, none of these super guilds had any real method of dealing with the dark guild. This was because Raven had no fewer top-tier experts than a super guild. Meanwhile, Shifeng could clearly feel that the dark guard before him was even more impressive than Bloodsucker. Of course, impressive did not refer to combat techniques. Rather, it was the dark guard's aura that impressed him. He felt more like a machine, cold and emotionless, than a human. Bloodsucker was a dark player. He could build a mountain with the corpses of the players he had killed, yet he could not feel as intimidating as this dark guard. Like a soulless robot, this dark guard revealed neither joy nor sadness. After Kirin and the others had departed, this indifferent dark guard led Shifeng and Bloodsucker through numerous teleportations, traveling far from Starmoon Kingdom and arriving in a remote town in the Dawn Empire. Following which, the trio rode their mounts for several hours before finally arriving in a seemingly uninhabited town. Unlike NPC towns, this town had plenty of NPC guards patrolling its borders. A captured town? After seeing the town's situation, Shifeng could not help but admire Raven. Various large guilds hungered to capture their own town. However, capturing a town was easier said than done. He had only managed to capture Stone Forest Town because the town was slightly unique. He had also been able to use hundreds of thousands of players as bait. Although players had reached higher levels and their attributes had increased significantly, capturing a town was still very difficult. Even super guilds needed to plan long-term to do so. They couldn't afford any mistakes. Otherwise, the consequences would be extremely dire. There was even less need to mention other guilds. On his way here, Shifeng had noticed that the surrounding monsters were all above level 40. With this, the town's original NPCs should have been level 60 at least. It was no longer possible to capture a town by relying on players' strength. One needed powerful external assistance such as Tier 3 summoning scrolls or a small army of personal guards. They could also use siege weapons. However, without any of that, capturing a town of this level was impossible. As for Bloodsucker, who was a member of Raven, he wore a dumbfounded expression. He could not believe his eyes. Despite being one of the guild's upper echelons, he had no clue that his guild had its own town. Is this the strength guild leader Bloodfang wants me to see? Shifeng asked the dark guard leading them. Currently, among God's domain's various powers, those capable of capturing a town of this caliber could be counted with one's fingers. However, after entering the town, Shifeng realized something. The town was extremely poor. Aside from a guild residence, the only other buildings were a hotel and a smithy. There was nothing else. Although the town was extremely poor, the several hundred players in the town were far from ordinary. Not only were they all level 38 or above, but they felt like ferocious beasts. The chill in their eyes was similar to the dark guards. There was not a shred of emotion in their gaze. They seemed even less human than high-intelligence NPCs. If not for the green diamond marker above their heads, Shifeng would have wondered if these players were the town's NPCs. Updated by Novelful.com. When Shifeng arrived before the town's only hotel, 3 cloaked men emerged from the dilapidated building. The auras around these men were the same as the dark guard who had led them here, and they felt just as dangerous to Shifeng. Guild leader has said that only Yifeng may enter. Bloodsucker, wait outside. After hearing the dark guard's command, Bloodsucker had no choice but to wait. As for Shifeng, he boldly waltzed into the hotel. He was very eager to learn just what kind of person Raven's guild leader was. Chapter 956, Priceless Town. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Inside the tattered hotel, aside from a man dressed and cloaked in black sitting on a windowsill and the 2 dark guards standing beside him, there were no players inside the establishment. There were only 2 NPCs inside the hotel, a bartender and a waiter. It was difficult to call this establishment a hotel. From the moment he entered to the moment he stopped before the black-cloaked man, the 2 dark guards watched Shifeng's every movement. If he made any sudden movements, they would eliminate Shifeng immediately. They both felt like well-trained bodyguards. This is their hotel. Why are they so nervous? The dark guard's behavior confused Shifeng. Their behavior furthered his interest in the man named Bloodfang. In his previous life, Bloodfang had never once revealed his true appearance to the world. He had been a complete mystery, even more secretive than the legendary Flower of Seven Sins. Although many people had looked into Bloodfang's background, no one ever learned anything. Bloodfang's identity was so obscured that nobody even knew whether he was a man or a woman. After all, there were many items in God's domain that could disguise a player. Moreover, Bloodfang wore a black cloak constantly. Even if one used an advanced identification skill, they would learn nothing. The only thing everyone knew was that Raven's members referred to their guild leader as Bloodfang. Care for a drink? Bloodfang asked after Shifeng's Saturday. The beverages here are very good. Unlike the dark guards, Bloodfang's voice was not void of emotion. Only his tone was somewhat gravely. No need. Just tell me what you want. You didn't invite me all this way just for a drink, right? Shifeng declined, shaking his head. Indeed, just as Bloodsucker had said, you really are straightforward. Bloodfang chuckled. Pointing to the town outside the window, he continued, I'll just get straight to the point. What do you think of this town? It is very shabby. However, the fact that your guild has captured this town shows that there must be something of great interest to your guild here, Shifeng said honestly. The Dawn Empire was very far from Starmoon Kingdom. Teleporting from Starmoon Kingdom to the Dawn Empire cost 4 gold, 24 silver. Even current expert players would be reluctant to pay this price. In the past, Shifeng's activity had always remained centered in Starmoon Kingdom. Hence, other than knowing their general location, Shifeng did not know much about distant kingdoms and empires. Of course, he still had some knowledge of major incidents. Although he had never personally visited these countries, the secret pavilion often reported major incidents that occurred in God's domain's various kingdoms and empires. However, as far as he could remember, nothing significant had occurred in the Dawn Empire at this stage of the game. Your senses are sharp. Indeed, as you've said, this town is quite shabby. However, Raven has paid a huge price to capture it. We've almost invested everything we've accumulated since joining God's domain to do so, Bloodfang said, sighing. I'm ashamed to say this, but although Raven has accumulated a lot of resources so far, constructing this town is too expensive. Shifeng revealed a surprised expression as Bloodfang explained the situation. He was very familiar with the town's construction. The construction's early stages required a hefty investment. However, to a power like Raven, it should not pose a problem. I don't expect you to believe me. However, I am not lying. This town is somewhat special. Although it looks like this now, this town was initially flourishing. What you're seeing is our second reconstruction. Helplessness tinged Bloodfang's voice as he spoke. The second time? Had the town been destroyed? Shifeng's shock grew. It was common knowledge that a newly constructed city could hire NPC guards to protect it for 15 days. To current players, level 150 NPC guards were invincible. Even if the surrounding level 40+ monsters sought to cause trouble, Raven could take care of them easily. This town was indestructible. That's right. This town has been destroyed once before. Even after hiring so many guards, in the end, we failed to defend it. Raven has invested too much into this town during its early stages. As a result, we can't afford the reconstruction. Hence, I sought to cooperate with Zero Wing, hoping to convince your guild to invest into this town and develop it with us, Bloodfang said, nodding sternly. Confidently, he continued, no other guild knows about the town's true value. I only discovered it after reading through an ancient document. If Zero Wing invests 100,000 gold, your guild will receive 20% of the town's income. Guild leader Bloodfang, you're talking about 100,000 gold, not 100,000 copper. With that kind of money, you can rebuild this town 6 or 7 times over, or construct 6 or 7 other towns, yet you're only offering 20% of this town's earnings. Even if there were a literal gold mine here, this town would never be worth that much money, Shifeng said, shaking his head. After hearing Bloodfang mentioning the words ancient document, Shifeng more or less understood that this town was different. However, he could construct a city's basic structure with 100,000 gold, much less a town. Even if this place had a gold mine, harvesting the ore would require tons of resources and manpower. Furthermore, they would have to smelt the ore into actual gold before they could sell it. Even if the harvest were high, if he only got 20% of the profits, who knew how long he would have to wait just to earn back his initial investment? He could not afford to throw what coins he currently possessed at this town. Elder Yi Feng, don't reject the offer so quickly. I have yet to explain why this town is so special. Shi Feng's refusal did not seem to surprise Bloodfang. Special? What's special about this place? Shi Feng asked. There is a manatite vein here. One can also obtain magic crystals alongside the manatite Oregon. Although the vein does not yield much, I believe that it does yield more than Stone Forest Town's daily income. This could certainly benefit the Candlelight trading firm, Bloodfang said, chuckling. How about it? Do you think my offer is worth consideration now? It's no wonder why guild leader Bloodfang is so confident. However, why Zero Wing? Wouldn't it be better to work with super guilds? With the financial strength and manpower of a super guild, you would have more than enough to develop the town, Shi Feng said. He had to admit that the offer was tempting. Manatite was one of God's domain's particularly rare minerals. As manatite or contained dense mana, magic crystals formed as a byproduct in a manatite vein. Although one could collect more mana crystals by grinding monsters in the Stoneclaw Mountains, there was one benefit to harvesting magic crystals from a mine: the absence of danger. As long as they had a sufficient mining level, any player could mine magic crystals. Moreover, the higher their mining level was, the greater their chances were of obtaining magic crystals. Chapter 957, Defense Turret. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 957 Defense Turret. In God's domain, many players used mining and herb gathering to get rich. Ordinary players had very few income options. Generally, players relied on quest rewards as common monsters rarely dropped coins. Only elite rank and higher monsters had any chance of dropping money. Even so, the chances were only around 2 or 3%. Moreover, they dropped copper coins. As for monsters dropping materials, the chances were even lower. After first joining God's domain, players could mostly afford their repair fees with their earnings from grinding common monsters. However, as their levels increased and the quality of their equipment rose, the money they earned from common monsters wouldn't be enough to maintain their items. Usually they had to grind elite monsters to cover their costs. If they were lucky and obtained a bronze weapon or piece of equipment, not only could they afford a day's worth of repair fees, but they might also have something to save. Unfortunately, that had only been the case after God's domain had first launched. Every time God's domain evolved, the main God system lowered weapon and equipment drop rates. Now that the game had undergone its fourth evolution, even elite monsters rarely dropped bronze weapons and equipment. One usually had to obtain such items from field bosses or dungeons. It was precisely this reason that lifestyle classes had become popular. Meanwhile, the lifestyle classes' development relied on various materials. As players moved through maps, they usually paid attention to their surroundings. However, they were not only doing so to avoid player or monster ambushes, but to find ores and herbs. A gathering player who was familiar with the environment could earn more money by selling the raw materials they gathered than what guild elite members could earn from fighting monsters. In the past, Shi Feng had frequently heard about gathering players obtaining excellent weapons and equipment solely by gathering ores and herbs. Many guilds and trading firms had signed contracts with expert gathering players. As long as these players fulfilled their monthly quota, not only could they sell their materials at market price, but they would also gain bonus credits. Hence, for players in God's domain, both mining and herb gathering were usually very high-leveled. If there truly were a manatite vein beneath this town, they only needed to hire players with high-level mining skills. They could certainly earn far more magic crystals than Stone Forest Town. After all, Stone Forest Town only earned magic crystals from players' repair and hotel fees. The town didn't earn nearly as much as players did in the Stoneclaw Mountains. My initial plan was to earn a large sum in the Dark Arena. However, Zero Wing's abilities have surpassed my expectations. While I have considered cooperating with super guilds before, they are simply too powerful. They might just take the town from Raven. Moreover, even if we form a partnership with super guild's appetite, Raven won't obtain much. Although there are a few more powers aside from super guilds that we could approach, these powers cannot provide as many coins as Zero Wing. How about it? By cooperating with Raven, not only would Zero Wing not lack magic crystals, but the Candlelight trading firm would also have plenty of manatite Oregon. You will certainly earn more than 100,000 gold. Bloodfang believed that the conditions he had proposed were quite generous. There was simply no reason for an upstart guild like Zero Wing to reject his offer. Currently, Zero Wing did not have many assets in God's domain. However, it was extremely difficult to invest in the real estate in other kingdoms and empires. The local guilds had long since claimed the available lands. As for kingdom and empire's main cities, although some golden lands were still available, without sufficient reputation in those cities, purchasing those lands was impossible. By the time someone from Zero Wing obtained the required reputation, others would have claimed those lands. In other words, Zero Wing should have a lot of money lying around right now, yet it could not effectively utilize the coins, spending money to make money. However, this could not be helped. After all, Zero Wing was merely an upstart guild. Its income couldn't even compare to a veteran second-rate guild, much less a super first-rate or super guild. If Zero Wing continued to hold on to its funds, it would eventually depreciate. This was also why, despite earning boatloads of gold, super guilds had very little liquid funds. This was because these super guilds had long since invested the money into something more valuable, particularly various cities' lands with high potential. If Zero Wing invested its excess coins into Raven, it could kill two birds with one stone. Guild leader Bloodfang, as I've said before, 100,000 gold coins are not 100,000 copper coins. Even super guilds can't hand over such a large amount, not to mention Zero Wing, Shifeng said, shaking his head. And again, you're only offering 20%. It will take ages to earn back our initial investment. God's domain changes each day. Zero Wing cannot make such a huge gamble. Why don't we change our method of cooperation? Bloodfang shook his head, responding, if you wish to invest manpower, forget it. Current players cannot defend this town. With the number and level of monsters attacking this town, we can only rely on NPCs to defend it. In fact, we need a small army. We also need to construct extremely powerful magical arrays and defense turrets before the 15-day protection period is over, all of which requires a large sum of coins. If not for his urgent need for money, he wouldn't have considered cooperating with Zero Wing at all. He very much preferred to have the town's profits to himself. There was not a single power in God's domain that would complain about having too much money, not to mention an essential item like the magic crystal. As expected, these monsters must be unusual. Hearing Bloodfang's words, Shifeng could faintly discern the true reason the town had been destroyed, and he could not help the corners of his lips curing up. In the past, towns with rare mineral and herb fields nearby were often harassed by the local monsters. Needless to say, a town with manatite would be assaulted once every few days. During God's domain's early stages, the various large guilds had headaches over these towns. After all, most of the money they earned had to be spent on the town's defense, with some towns needing additional investment. As Bloodfang had said, constructing one Tier 3 defensive magic array to defend a town would cost 32,000 gold. Although the magic array would block any monsters below Tier 4 level 200, it required a lot of mana to operate. As for the defense turret, each one cost 7,000 gold to construct. Generally, monsters would come from all directions when raiding a town. Even if they placed only one defense turret at each of the 4 cardinal points, they needed at least 4 defense turrets. Moreover, the turret's artillery shells were very expensive. At market price, each shell cost 5 gold, with higher quality ones costing dozens. Furthermore, a single defense turret at each corner wasn't nearly enough. They would need at least 2. With this, the total cost was around 88,000 gold. It was no wonder why Bloodfang wanted a 100,000 gold investment. However, players' wisdom was infinite. In the past, after the various large guilds had experimented countless times, they had finally found a method to not only save on the high construction cost, but also resist against the swarms of invading monsters. Chapter 958, Inconceivable Zero Wing. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. If you can't make a decision right now, you can return after discussing it with your guild leader. However, I can only give you a day to consider. Bloodfang did not believe that there was another option for cooperation. He believed that Zero Wing could not afford to hand over that much money in such a short time. 100,000 gold is no small amount. I do not believe that Zero Wing can collect that much money in so little time either. You can pay 40,000 gold up front and the remaining 60,000 in the next 5 days. Raven was currently broke. They had used almost all of their money to reconstruct the town and hire the necessary NPC guards. However, these NPC guards were still not capable of standing against all those monsters. If they wanted to defend the town, they needed to construct the defensive magic array. With the magic array and the NPC guards, they should survive through the 15-day protection period. As long as they constructed the defense turrets during the protection period, they could begin mining the manatite vein without issues. Guild leader Bloodfang, 100,000 gold is just too much. Even Zero Wing can't spend that much money. Shifeng again rejected Bloodfang's offer. Why don't we try a different method of cooperation? Zero Wing will be responsible for protecting the town. However, you will pay us 30% of the vein's income. He still needed a large sum to construct his own city. How could he possibly give Raven his coins? Moreover, even without the defensive magic array and NPC guards, it was possible to prevent monsters from trampling the town. He could simply head to Blackwing City and purchase a monster repellent scroll. The monster repellent scroll was an item that could disperse monsters within a certain area, preventing low-intelligence monsters from actively approaching. Although the effect was temporary, the scroll was very cheap. Each scroll only cost 5 gold. It was much more cost-effective than constructing a defensive magic array or defense turrets. In God's domain, the defensive magic array and defense turrets were mainly used during monster raids. When dealing with players, however, they were not as effective as NPC guards, yet they cost far more. Rather than wasting money on that particular plan, Shifeng would be better off investing his money into his own guild or somewhere else. Generally, the monsters that raided towns and cities possessed very low intelligence, so the monster repellent scroll could chase them away. As for using the scroll against the Abyss invasion, very few abyssal monsters possessed low intelligence. Hence, the scroll wouldn't be as effective. Let Zero Wing defend the town? Bloodfang could not help but laugh at Shifeng's proposal. It's not that I am looking down on Zero Wing, but rather, these monsters are over level 100. There are thousands of them. With players' current strength, it is impossible to defend against such an onslaught. And even if you succeed, why should I give you 30% for defending the town when I can ensure its safety for 100,000 gold? Wouldn't that be more of a loss? If this is your offer, I would rather contact several other major powers. I believe that they will be more than willing to cooperate. Zero Wing was not Bloodfang's only option. The only problem was that none of the major powers could afford a 100,000 gold investment. However, he did not necessarily need 100,000 gold. As long as he had the initial 40,000 gold, he could construct a sufficient number of hotels during the 15-day protection period. With a place to replenish their stamina in, his subordinates could mine for magic crystals continuously. He could earn enough money to construct the required defense turrets before the protection period ended. However, Raven would have to be particularly frugal during this period. If so, I have another suggestion. For each monster raid Zero Wing stops, Raven will pay 6,000 magic crystals. What do you think of that? Shifeng casually suggested. Are you serious? Bloodfang asked in surprise. If they utilized this method, the town's income would belong to Raven fully. As long as they could begin their mining operation, Raven wouldn't have any financial problems. They could quickly construct a powerful defense. Only the initial period would be the most difficult. He hadn't expected Shifeng to be interested in such an exchange. Had Shifeng simply handed over 100,000 gold, he could have received 20% of the town's income. As time passed, he would earn far more than 100,000 gold, yet for short-term profit he had given up on a future gold mine. Bloodfang found it hard to believe that a large guild's upper echelon would make such a rash decision. Of course I'm serious. I've already discussed this with my guild leader, and he has approved. Now it is up to you whether or not to accept this condition. Shifeng chuckled. Alright, I agree to work with Zero Wing. I just hope that you don't regret this decision, Bloodfang said. Even after watching Shifeng for a long time, he did not understand the man's thoughts. He could not figure out what Black Flame, Zero Wing's guild leader, was thinking either. The only reason he had agreed to offer Zero Wing a share of the town was because he had worried the guild would not be willing to fork over the money. That Zero Wing had refused the shares, only asking for some magic crystals, was good news for Raven. The monster raids did not occur every day. Generally they only attacked every other night. Even if Zero Wing defended the town from 10 attacks, he would only spend 60,000 magic crystals. When the town's defenses were complete, he would not need Zero Wing's assistance. Based on the current market price, each magic crystal was worth 25 silver. Even if Zero Wing defended the town for 20 days, he would only spend 15,000 gold. No matter how he looked at it, he would profit from this trade. Following which, Shifeng signed a contract with Bloodfang. As long as Zero Wing helped Raven defend against a monster raid, Raven would pay 6,000 magic crystals. Moreover, the payment could only be made in magic crystals. If Raven could not pay up, it would have to pay 5 times the value of the magic crystals with coins or other products. Aside from that, Raven must also allow Zero Wing to construct a guild residence in the town so that Zero Wing's members could travel here easily. Of course, if Zero Wing failed to defend the town, it would have to pay Raven a reconstruction fee of 30,000 gold. It is highly likely that the next raid will happen tomorrow night, but I can't say for sure. I hope that you will be prepared before then. Although Bloodfang had signed the contract with Shifeng, he was still worried. Could Zero Wing really defend against that many monsters? Rest assured. Once Zero Wing's residence has been constructed, you won't have to worry about monsters, Shifeng replied confidently. Now that they had signed the contract, he was in a great mood. Although it seemed as if Raven had just secured Zero Wing's help, dealing with the Dark Guild's biggest concern, Zero Wing would gain far more than 20% of the town's income. However, Bloodfang didn't know this. While the monster repellent scroll was very convenient, it also had a huge flaw. The scroll could only chase monsters away, not exterminate them. As they fled, the monster army would grow. When players stopped using the monster repellent scroll, the subsequent raid would be intense, even horrific. As long as the army grew 4 or 5 times, the town would fall even if they had 30 turrets. Chapter 959, Spirit Seal. Shifeng had no intention of telling Bloodfang about the monster repellent scroll's flaws. They were collaborators, not friends. They were simply obtaining what they needed from each other. Whether or not Raven could fend off the monster army was none of his concern. After all, he only needed to pay a small price for Raven to endure through the early phases of the town's construction. Moreover, it would be a waste if he did not rip off a magic crystal tycoon like Raven. White River City's teleportation house urgently needed magic crystals. As long as he had enough magic crystals, he could turn them into coins. Once Zero Wing had its first city, it would have a safeguard of its own. As the main god system had administered the contract between them, both parties felt reassured. Shifeng had initially planned to leave using a return scroll. However, Bloodfang suddenly stopped him. A moment. Bloodfang held Shifeng back. Smiling, he continued, I still have information that I think will be of use to Zero Wing. Saying so, Bloodfang took out a black envelope and passed it to Shifeng. Shifeng raised his brows when he saw the envelope. Although the envelope looked normal, it was actually an encrypted message. No one would be able to read the message aside from the intended player. Moreover, after the message was read, it would self-destruct. Even recording the message would not be possible. A video message? After opening the envelope, the message came in the form of a video file. Following which, Shifeng clicked to open the file. When he finished watching the video, however, he was shocked. In the video displayed numerous players encircling a one-horned humanoid creature that loomed over 3 meters tall and wore a black robe. Numerous crimson runes resembling flames decorated this humanoid creature's body. Moreover, the humanoid creature exuded black fog from its body, and players shuddered when its crimson eyes turned towards them. Aside from this monster's level and HP, the video showed nothing about it. Neither the monster's level nor its HP was very high at level 40 with just over 1 million HP. With a rough guess, Shifeng surmised that the monster was only chieftain rank, yet even it had massacred several hundred elite players. However, rather than the deaths of several hundred level 35-plus elites players, the one-horned monster's extraordinary actions were the key points of the video. The monster's combat style was similar to a player's. Moreover, whenever this monster killed a player, not only did it recover some HP, but its attributes also rose slightly. Most importantly, Shifeng noticed something familiar on the monster's body. The spirit seal used to absorb immortal souls. Charlin had only marked the spirit seal on the back of his hand so that he could complete his quest, and this spirit seal would only shine silver when absorbing an immortal soul. The same spirit seal had been imprinted on the humanoid monster's chest. Every time the monster killed a player, the spirit seal radiated a faint silver glow. From an outsider's point of view, the glowing spirit seal throbbed like the monster's heartbeat. A passing expert assassin had recorded this video. As this assassin had maintained his distance from the battlefield and stayed in stealth, they had been hard to detect. Hence, this video was a record of the entire battle. After the one-horned monster finished killing the elite players, something even more astonishing happened. Usually, monsters didn't pay attention to the items players dropped when they died unless they were quest-related items, yet after killing the players, the one-horned monster looted the drops. Before the monster left the area, several other figures appeared. Among these figures, a few looked like the monster. Not only were they tall, but a single horn also grew from their foreheads. Surprisingly, a player stood among them. However, as this scene had been recorded from far away and due to the player's black cloak and mask, Shifeng could not even discern the player's gender, much less their identity. Yet, Shifeng was certain that it was a player due to the green diamond marker about their head. The marker was unique to players. The assassin expert had tried to follow the monsters. However, he had been discovered. Although the level 38 assassin expert tried with all his might to flee, in the end, he failed to escape the one-horned monsters. How can there be such monsters? Shifeng inwardly shuddered as he watched the monsters kill the assassin. In terms of combat techniques, the assassin could reach the trial tower's 6th floor with his standards. He would be a considerably powerful expert, even in a first-rate guild. After all, the general public recognized players as experts once they had reached the 4th floor. Yet, the monster's combat standards were stronger than the assassin's. Unfortunately, due to a lack of combat footage, Shifeng could not discern the one-horned monster's true capabilities. Even so, Shifeng roughly guessed them to be near the half-step refinement realm at the very least. If they had been NPCs, Shifeng would not be surprised if they had reached this standard. After all, he had encountered NPCs with much higher combat standards than that. However, for God's domain's monsters to fight like this, their intelligence must be extremely high. Even great lords didn't fight like this. The assassin who recorded this video is a red player and a slightly famous one at that. It had been 2 days since he had died, but even now he cannot log into God's domain, Bloodfang informed Shifeng. Very few people know about this. From what this player has said, these monsters are extremely powerful. Before these monsters dealt with that elite team, they were roaming the area, killing field bosses. These monsters were also capable of increasing their attributes by killing both monsters and players. Moreover, their intelligence is very high. The assassin reported that, when he had faced those one-horned monsters, it had felt as if he had been fighting expert players. They were so intelligent that they could easily predict his movements and implement the appropriate countermeasures. What does this have to do with Zero Wing? Shifeng asked. Although he agreed that these monsters were extraordinary, there were many bizarre situations in God's domain. It might be some sort of in-game event. Furthermore, he was already swamped with his own matters. He did not have the time to concern himself with someone else's business. This video was taken in Starmoon Kingdom, only a short distance from Stone Forest Town. Although these monsters are not yet a threat to the NPCs protecting the town, I believe that the town's safety will be a problem once the protection period ends. After all, nobody can say for sure just how powerful those monsters can become, Bloodfang said, chuckling. Chapter 960, Evil God Appears. They are near Stone Forest Town? Shifeng fell quiet as he pondered the situation. He could not remember such monsters in Starmoon Kingdom in his previous life. This was the first time he had ever seen such a thing. If they were mutants, they wouldn't let any creature live. And they might allow a pair to tag along. They were somewhat similar to mutants in that they could grow stronger by killing other monsters and players. Indeed, just as Bloodfang had said, while there was nothing to worry about right now, as the monsters grew stronger, they would become very dangerous. Before I sent Bloodsucker to negotiate with you, I sent him to investigate. Based on Bloodsucker's report, not only was every field boss in the area dead, but he couldn't find a single common monster either. Moreover, he discovered a similar situation in the nearby level 60 map, Bloodfang said. He then shared several pictures with Shifeng. Bloodsucker took these images in the level 60 area. With the monster's growth rate, it won't be long before they're a threat to Stone Forest Town or NPC towns. When Shifeng saw one of the pictures, he could not believe his eyes. The originally lush forest had become a scorched land pocketed with craters. Bloodsucker had also captured the corpse of a level 63 Great Lord that had been over 30 meters tall. The corpse had withered like a mummy. What was more frightening was that common monsters stopped spawning in the locations the one-horned monsters had visited. This was the equivalent of crippling an entire map. Although the effects were barely noticeable right now, if this continued, there wouldn't be any leveling spots left in Starmoon Kingdom. Thank you for your information, Guild Leader Bloodfang. I have some matters to deal with, so I'll be leaving. Shi Feng frowned deeply as he finished looking through the pictures. After saying his goodbyes, he retrieved a return scroll and activated it. After Shi Feng transformed into a streak of white light and disappeared, Bloodfang turned towards one of the dark guards beside him and commanded, "Tell Bloodsucker to pull out our men from Starmoon Kingdom and relocate them in the Black Dragon Empire temporarily. Guild leader, our business is doing relatively well in Starmoon Kingdom. If we pull out of the kingdom now, we will lose a significant amount of income. Moreover, those monsters are only around Starmoon City right now. Do we need to be this cautious?" The Dark Guard asked in surprise. "Do you really think those monsters are that simple?" Bloodfang eyed the Dark Guard. "There's one thing that I didn't mention to Zero Wing. I recently received a report from the Thorn Shadow team, stating that they've discovered the one-horned monster's whereabouts. Do you know what else they discovered?" The Dark Guard shook his head. "Those monsters are currently based in an NPC town in a level 50 map. They have nested in the town. The previous reports counted less than 10 monsters, yet now there are hundreds. Moreover, the lowest level among them is level 50, while the highest are over level 80. With their development speed, something is bound to happen in Starmoon Kingdom sooner or later. It is best if we bow out now. Don't forget that every player that those monsters had killed still can't log into God's domain," Bloodfang said. Chuckling, he continued, "Moreover, I've received news that the bastards from the Blackwater Corporation have decided to make their move in Starmoon Kingdom. It is best that we avoid them for now." "What? Blackwater Corporation has finally joined God's domain? Why are they starting with Starmoon Kingdom?" When the Dark Guard heard Bloodfang mention the Blackwater Corporation, his indifferent expression changed as fear flashed in his eyes. "I'm not sure. However, my guess is that it is likely due to this new class. After all, throughout God's domain, it is the easiest for players to obtain the new class through Starmoon Kingdom. A batch of players with this new class would benefit their development in the game," Bloodfang said, shaking his head. "Among the many major corporations, I hate Blackwater the most. They always use unscrupulous means to achieve their goals, and they never follow the rules. Zero Wing will have to rely on its own power to weather this coming storm." Shortly after Bloodfang issued his command, although the command confused Bloodsucker, he began to move the several hundred Raven members hidden throughout Starmoon Kingdom, shifting their operations to the Black Dragon Empire. As for Shi Feng, rather than traveling to Blackwing City to purchase the monster repellent scrolls, he visited Starmoon City instead. Starmoon City had visibly changed over the past few days. Many of the players roaming the streets were from other kingdoms and empires, all hawking their weapons and equipment. The city had also experienced an increase of their non-combat players. These players were relatively low-leveled, with some even below level 20. However, they were all very rich. These people were merchant players. In cities, it was extremely difficult for ordinary players to obtain their own shops. There were also fixed times when players could set up stalls in the free market. As for using the auction house, the handling fees were too high for ordinary merchant players. Hence, these players generally peddled their items on the streets. If they found an interested buyer, they would conduct a trade. Although doing so was somewhat time-consuming and strenuous, every coin an ordinary player earned counted. Merchant players who dealt weapons and equipment in particular could earn a nice income. After reaching level 10, merchant players roamed between various cities and countries, purchasing items from players in one city and reselling those items elsewhere. After all, every city and country's prices were different. Merchants could earn a lot of money due to this difference. As these players had chosen the merchant class, they received a discount on teleportation fees as they traveled across God's domain. Moreover, like lifestyle classes, merchants were divided into ranks. The higher their rank, the higher their discounts were on teleportation fees. In the past, many players had earned enough capital from their travels to construct shops in NPC cities. Otherwise, if one relied on an ordinary combat player's income, they could never afford a plot of land, even after a lifetime of saving. Following which, Shi Feng followed the main street to Grand Duke Hartfield's mansion. The NPCs guarding the mansion didn't stop Shi Feng, allowing him to enter the Grand Duke's home. However, Shi Feng had not come here for the Twilight treasure chest this time, but for the one-horned monsters. Shi Feng had not initially recognized the one-horned monster's origin. However, from what he had learned from the pictures and Bloodfang, he was certain of one thing. Those one-horned monsters were somehow related to the evil god's temple. Across the continent of God's domain, abyssal monsters weren't the only threat to humans. There were other dark powers at play. Among these dark powers, the most dangerous was the evil god's temple. Unlike the war god's temple, which specialized in resisting abyss invasions, the evil god's temple focused on destroying God's domain. Moreover, the temple thirsted for the destruction of all life, unlike the abyssal monsters who only aimed to conquer. Chapter 961, Sword Emperor Ryan. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. Chapter 961, Sword Emperor Ryan. In the garden-like mansion, Shifeng followed the level 150 NPC steward to the mansion's observation deck. As Starmoon Kingdom's only Grand Duke, Heartfield's status was only beneath the king's. Naturally, his mansion was astonishing. The observation deck was awe-inspiring. Not only did it float high in the air, but its floating elevator had also been crafted from 7 luminaries crystals. Even Starmoon Restaurant's rooftop view could not compare to the view from this observation deck. Furthermore, only the palace and Starmoon auction house were higher up than the Grand Duke's observation deck. Shifeng felt as if he were standing atop the clouds as he looked out. He had an unobstructed view of Starmoon City. The gentle breeze touching his face relaxed him. Despite the relatively normal mana density, he felt utterly carefree. Enjoying a meal here would be the epitome of luxury. In the past, many major guilds had attempted to construct similar observation decks in their own cities, not excluding Shadow. However, only after the attempt did people realize how expensive it was. The floating deck required incomparably precious materials. Although they were not as rare as the 7 luminaries crystals, the floating stones were rare throughout God's domain. On the market, a fist-sized floating stone would sell for dozens of gold. One could imagine just how much it would cost to construct an observation deck the size of a basketball court. Crafting the necessary floating elevator also required 7 luminaries crystals. Those crystals were the core components of mind spaces, and players were more than reluctant to part with them. Very few people could afford to use them to craft a floating elevator. Moreover, the moment the floating elevator was complete, other players would likely attempt to steal it. Next to the level 200, Tier 3 Grand Duke Heartfield stood a middle-aged man in silver armor. A white mantle had been draped over the man's back, and a sword with a gem-encrusted hilt hung from his waist. Golden, divine runes had been engraved on the sword's scabbard, giving it both a sacred and magnificent appearance. Seeing this treasured sword, Shifeng had no doubt that, when this man walked down the street with that blade, he attracted a lot of attention. Countless female players and sword enthusiasts would hover around him like flies. Oddly enough, Shifeng recognized this man. The man's name was Ryan Ryder, and he was the captain of Starmoon Kingdom's Royal Guard. He was also a level 200 Tier 4 Sword Emperor. He was even stronger than White River City's powerhouse, Weissman, and was known for being the closest person to becoming a sword saint in Starmoon Kingdom. Although there were Tier 5 NPCs in Starmoon Kingdom, none of these NPCs were affiliated with the kingdom. They originated from the several major NPC organizations in God's domain. Eucharis, the Temple Lord of Starmoon Kingdom's War God's Temple, was one such example. Even the king had to show Eucharis respect. There was also the incomparably mysterious Charlene. Although Shifeng did not know which NPC organization Charlene belonged to, he was certain that she did not belong to Starmoon Kingdom. Hence, aside from the Grand Marshal Adolf Serret, one could say that Ryan Ryder was the strongest NPC in Starmoon Kingdom. In front of the Grand Duke and the Royal Guard captain standing side by side, any ordinary player would be petrified. Surprisingly, Shifeng approached them casually. The NPC steward respectfully moved to the side. 2 of Starmoon Kingdom's VIPs are here together. It seems that something serious is really happening in the kingdom. Seeing the 2 NPCs before him, Shifeng was more confident of his assumptions. The appearance of the evil god's temple hinted that something major would happen soon. This was practically a natural law in God's domain. Shifeng could remember that nearly half of Lion's Heart Empire had been destroyed in the past due to the evil god's temple's appearance. Even the ruling super guild in the Lion's Heart Empire had suffered severe losses, not to mention the empire's smaller guilds. This incident had shocked all of God's domain. No one had expected an NPC dark organization to be so powerful. After that incident, players exploded into action to remove the evil god's temple the moment any related issues occurred. Even so, every country in which the temple appeared suffered heavy damages. After all, when the evil god's temple appeared, all life and land were forfeit. Even after the threat was eliminated, the area took a long time to recover. Such situations' impact on local players and guilds was massive. Hence, Shifeng had hurried here. It was very difficult to gain entry into Starmoon Palace. Meeting with Grand Duke Heartfield, however, was easier. Everything would be fine as long as he reported the matter regarding the evil god's temple to Heartfield. The Grand Duke could then travel to the palace and inform the king. With the power of the kingdom's army, eliminating the one-horned monsters should be easy. Young adventurer, we meet again, Grand Duke Heartfield greeted Shifeng as he approached. Caressing his goatee, Heartfield chuckled lightly before continuing, Weissman has told me much about you. I would never have imagined that, despite being so young, you were capable of helping Lady Charlene with various matters. If my 2 sons were as outstanding as you, I could retire without worry. As Heartfield finished his praise, Ryan Ryder could not help but look at Shifeng. This made Shifeng feel somewhat strange. He had not expected his fame to spread to NPCs. Moreover, these 2 influential characters in Starmoon Kingdom had heard of him. Lord Heartfield, I have come with an urgent message that must reach His Majesty the King. However, I cannot enter the palace, so I was hoping that you might transmit the message for me, Shifeng requested respectfully. All right then. If your news is as important as you say, I will pass on the message. Heartfield nodded, sternly agreeing to Shifeng's request. I have found traces of the evil god's temple in the Starfield Forest. The forest is currently devoid of life. If we don't stop the evil god's temple in time, it will quickly become a threat to the capital, Shifeng said after considering his words. As for the validity of my claim, Lord Heartfield simply needs to send someone to investigate Starfield Forest. High-ranking NPCs in God's domain were incredibly intelligent. Oftentimes, players were not required to present proof when reporting an incident. The NPC would take action as long as they reported the facts, initiating their own investigations. Once the report was verified, players would receive a reward. If the report were proven false, players would be punished. However, players needed to earn these NPCs' trust before they could report various issues. If a player lacked credibility, NPCs wouldn't bother to investigate the situations even if the player told the truth. Previously, Shifeng had gained some favorability with the Grand Duke. His words alone could prompt an investigation. If he were dealing with any other NPC, however, they wouldn't even give him the light of day. The Evil God's Temple. The Evil God's Temple has appeared so close to the capital. When Heartfield heard Evil God's Temple, he tensed. The energy around him also changed. Captain Ryan, like the report you've recently received, it seems that those damnable evil cultists are on the move again, Heartfield said, anger filling his eyes. After their failed attempt 15 years ago, they are going after that item again. This time I will erase them from Starmoon Kingdom. After the Grand Duke's statement, the sound of a system notification reached Shifeng's ears, with Starmoon Kingdom system announcement following closely. Chapter 962, Legendary Necromancer. System, congratulations. You have accepted the epic ranked main storyline quest, Evil God's Birth. Quest content, exterminate the evil god's believers in the Starmoon Kingdom. If you fail to exterminate the evil god's believers before they summon the evil god, Starmoon Kingdom will fall into ruin. As the system was notification repeated 3 times, Shifeng was momentarily stunned. He had only been the messenger, yet he had triggered an epic ranked main storyline quest in Starmoon Kingdom. This was not good news for Zero Wing. Shortly after the system notifications, the system announcements followed. Starmoon Kingdom System Announcement. New Expansion Pack, Disaster of the Evil God, has been activated. Starmoon Kingdom System Announcement. Ruins of the Evil God's Temple has been discovered in the Undead Gorge. Azura Mode Regional Dungeon, the Undead Gorge, has been activated. Players level 35 and above may enter the dungeon. The system announcement also repeated 3 times, creating a stir in Starmoon Kingdom. Awesome. Who triggered the new expansion pack? An Azura Mode Regional Dungeon? The loot will be amazing. It's actually an Azura Mode Regional Dungeon. I bet the dungeon's monsters will drop magic crystals. I won't have to continue fighting for kills in the Stoneclaw Mountains. The majority of the kingdom's players were incredibly interested in the new regional dungeon. Originally, the only regional dungeon that offered magic crystals was the Stoneclaw Mountains. However, it had become a haunt for Starmoon Kingdom's various large guilds. Even though the area provided abundant resources, ordinary players' share was very small. Moreover, the competition for those resources grew with each day. The new Azura mode regional dungeon's appearance was definitely a cause to celebrate for the majority of Star Moon Kingdom's players. At the very least, there was now another area in which they could obtain magic crystals. Moreover, the Undead Gorge was much closer to Star Moon City than the Stoneclaw Mountains. Only a single map separated the gorge and the capital. The only problem was that the monsters in said map were somewhat high-leveled, all above level 50. If one crossed the map without being strong enough, the risk of death would be quite high. However, this could also help disqualify some players, reducing the competition in the regional dungeon. The only downside was equipment repairs. Unlike in the Stoneclaw Mountains, none of the Undead Gorge's adjacent maps had a town. It would take 4 hours to run there from the nearest teleportation point. While this was a huge problem for independent players, the various large guilds found this acceptable. At the very least, they wouldn't have to pay Zero Wing with magic crystals if they grinded in the Undead Gorge. Moreover, once their guild members obtained mounts, they could save time when traveling. For a time, Star Moon Kingdom's various large guilds began to prepare to garrison troops in the Undead Gorge. A new regional dungeon hinted that there would be undiscovered resources. If they entered the Undead Gorge immediately, they could obtain more than their competition. "Young adventurer, I would like you to help me with something," Hartfield sternly told Shifeng. "Now that the evil god's believers have appeared, I suspect that Byrne, the legendary necromancer from 15 years ago, is up to something new. I want you to locate him for me. If Byrne is trying to hold a summoning ritual, he will need to slaughter many to gather enough power to summon the evil god's doppelganger. I have a tracking crystal that has recorded the evil god's power. It will help you search for the evil god's power within an area. If Byrne is absorbing the power of the area's creatures, the tracking crystal will detect him. Once you discover their nest, all you need to do is report back. However, be careful in your search. Byrne is a legendary necromancer, and with the aid of the evil god's power, he can summon extremely powerful monsters. Summoning the evil god's doppelganger will require a lot of power, so he will have certainly nurtured many powerful monsters to help him gather what he needs. If you want to deal with these monsters, you should head to the remains of the evil god's temple in the Undead Gorge. You might find some method of dealing with them. Once Hartfied finished speaking, he passed Shifeng a blue crystal block. Tracking crystal. When activated, will scan 5,000 yards in every direction for the evil god's power. Each use consumes 1 magic crystal. Cooldown, 30 minutes. What an inconvenient item. Shifeng said nothing as he stared at the crystal block in his hand. Fortunately, it would require time to gather the necessary power to summon the evil god. The one-horned monsters would continue to massacre everything in their path. He would sooner or later find them, then he only needed to follow them back to their nest. Following which, Shifeng left the Grand Duke's mansion with the tracking crystal in hand. He notified Aqua Rose to send some men to search the maps near Stone Forest Town for clues about the one-horned monsters. After completing that task, he teleported to Blackwing City. Meanwhile, inside Ouroboros's guild residence in Star Moon Kingdom, a meeting was being held. Usually, only the guild's upper echelons were invited to such meetings. This meeting, however, included 3 outsiders. Guild Leader Snow, there are many benefits to becoming one of the Blackwater Corporation's subordinate guilds. Won't you consider it? The gloomy, short-haired youth who headed the group of outsiders asked, smiling at Gentle Snow. Many benefits? Zhao Yueru repeated from beside Gentle Snow, anger tinging her words. You're asking for management of Ouroboros and 90% of its shares, yet you're offering us less than 1/10 of the market price. These are your so-called benefits? Oh, don't put it like that. With Blackwater Corporation's fame and influence, I am sure that you know how much our management will benefit Ouroboros. The guild will become immensely strong, the short-haired youth said, chuckling. Joining the Blackwater Corporation now is your best choice. Otherwise, you'll run into a dead end in the future. You won't get anything at all. Are you threatening me? Gentle Snow frowned. It is not a threat. I am simply offering a suggestion. I doubt that your investors will want to make an enemy of Blackwater, the youth said. He then turned to Ouroboros's elders saying, Your guild elders are aware of this. Did they not tell you yet? What is going on? Gentle Snow shifted her gaze towards the several guild elders beside her. Each elder represented one of Ouroboros's investors. Their words were the investors' will. Our companies have already reached a consensus and decided to join the Blackwater Corporation. Snow, please don't blame us. We don't have a choice. Blackwater has been putting pressure on our companies as of late, so our profits are in jeopardy. If this continues, our companies may go bankrupt. We had to compromise, an elder explained softly. Chapter 963, 3 Days. The Blackwater Corporation Employees' Impressive Tactics. Gentle Snow glanced at the short-haired youth sitting opposite of her, listening to several elders' explanations. In the virtual gaming world, third-rate or greater guilds typically split their shares among multiple shareholders. Zero Wing was unique in this, as guilds were rarely under the control of a single entity, much less first-rate guilds. Although a first-rate guild was the equivalent of a corporation and capable of earning its own money, when a guild of such caliber joined a large-scale virtual reality game, it needed a lot of capital to begin developing. God's Domain was peculiar among large-scale virtual reality games. Even with a first-rate guild's financial strength, investments from various companies were needed for a guild to spread its influence throughout God's Domain as it attempted to dominate one or multiple kingdoms. This was precisely the reason that multiple companies held the majority of Ouroboros' shares. If these companies came to an agreement, even she, the guild leader, was forced to accept the decision. However, Gentle Snow had never imagined Blackwater to be despicable enough to force Ouroboros into submission. Generally, major international corporations disdained such tactics, as doing so would only make them a laughingstock. Guild leader Snow, what is your decision? The short-haired youth ignored the snow goddess's ridicule. On the contrary, he sneered and said, I know this is a very difficult decision to make. How about this? We'll give you 3 days to consider your options. If you insist on rejecting our offer in 3 days, we'll be forced to put someone else in the guild leader's seat. After making his threat, the short-haired youth left the meeting room. The 2 level 39 expert players followed him closely. Big Brother Wave, why don't we just get rid of Gentle Snow? It would make it easier to take over Ouroboros. Now that you've given her 3 more days, she might persuade those on the fence or purchase their shares. If she does, it'll be harder to occupy the guild. The 2 robust men asked the gloomy short-haired youth. The Blackwater Corporation's goal from the very beginning was to take control of Starmoon Kingdom. After turning Starmoon Kingdom into the corporation's playground, they would use it as a stepping stone to dominate the Black Dragon Empire. Even if Gentle Snow agreed to their conditions, they would not let Ouroboros survive. Rather, Blackwater would establish its own guild and absorb Ouroboros, gaining complete control. Hence, they did not need Gentle Snow's consent. Do you really think I will give her 3 days to make a decision? The short-haired youth clicked his tongue. Sneering, he continued, I am just giving Ouroboros' members time to adapt. If I remove Gentle Snow from her position suddenly, it will cause quite a stir in the guild. Not only will it decrease the guild's morale, but I will also have a lot of trouble rectifying the problem. Now that I am giving Gentle Snow 3 days, however, news of this matter will spread throughout the guild. We'll encounter less resistance when we take over the guild's management. Most importantly, young Master Jing has not yet sent me enough experts to take Ouroboros over. In 3 days we should have enough personnel to assume control. At that time we will gain control of Starmoon City, and it won't be long before we possess all of Starmoon Kingdom. Big Brother Wave, what about Starmoon Kingdom's #1 guild, Zero Wing? Are we not negotiating with them? I've heard that Zero Wing is particularly stubborn, and the guild leader alone controls the guild. It will be more difficult to take over. We won't need to worry about that. Young Master Jing has other plans for Zero Wing, the youth named Abandoned Wave responded nonchalantly. How are the people that young Master Jing sent adapting? Big Brother Wave, rest assured, with our guidance they're improving each day. I believe they will adapt to God's Domain's combat style very quickly with the help of the battle videos we procured and the trail tower. As long as their levels are brought up to speed, they will be the guild's greatest trump card, one of the robust men reported excitedly. The Blackwater Corporation was not like other corporations. It could actually fit quite well in God's Domain. After all, Blackwater was an international corporation that dealt with fighting competitions. The corporation's dojos spanned the globe. Moreover, the corporation was also one of the world fighting competition's main hosts. With the amateur fighters in God's Domain, it would be a piece of cake for Blackwater to dominate the game. If not for the recent launch of the Mind Space System, the Blackwater Corporation wouldn't have harbored the slightest thought of investing in God's domain. Once Abandoned Waves Group left, pandemonium swept through Ouroboros. The guild was no longer focused on the new regional dungeon. Meanwhile, Shifeng had arrived in Blackwing City's Magic District. Unlike ordinary NPC cities, which were generally divided into the Noble District and the Commoner District, the NPCs and players that reached Blackwing City were extraordinary. Moreover, even if other kingdoms and empires' nobles ventured to this city, they were ordinary here. In the Magic District, NPC-owned magic shops were everywhere. There were at least 100 such shops in the district. Not only did these shops sell all kinds of daily-use magic items, but they also sold magic scrolls. Some even sold rare magic scrolls that could not be found in ordinary NPC cities. The Monster Repellent Scroll was one such magic scroll. Initially, players had assumed that the Monster Repellent Scroll had no particular value. After all, it was only capable of driving off low-intelligence monsters. Moreover, as players reached higher levels and explored higher-leveled maps, they encountered fewer low-intelligence monsters. Hence, there was rarely a need for the Monster Repellent Scroll. Furthermore, the scroll was expensive. The Monster Repellent Scroll had only gained popularity after players discovered its ability to protect towns. However, as one of the rare magic scrolls sold in Blackwing City, the Monster Repellent Scroll was not infinitely available. Only a limited quantity could be purchased each day. Moreover, only one magic shop sold the scroll, so it wasn't easy to obtain. Overall, only 20 Monster Repellent Scrolls were available in Blackwing City each day. When Shifeng entered the magic shop that sold the Monster Repellent Scrolls, he discovered numerous waiting players. These players turned towards Shifeng. Why are people from the sacred temple here? Shifeng was somewhat surprised when he saw these players. Chapter 964, Extraordinary Nobody. Connor's magic shop was an unassuming shop in Blackwing City. The shop was hidden deep in an alley, making it difficult to spot. Moreover, the goods sold in the luxurious magic shops lining the Magic District's main street were already more than enough to satisfy players' needs. Hence, very few went out of their way to look for Connor's magic shop. Shifeng had never expected to meet members of the Super Guild's Sacred Temple here. Aside from the glaring Sacred Temple members, a familiar woman chatted with the NPC shopkeeper. "Sister Melody, should we chase this player away?" A male summoner wearing light blue mage robes asked quietly. This male summoner looked relatively young, around 20 years old, yet he was already at level 39. The aura of strength and arrogance he exuded revealed him as more than an ordinary expert. Moreover, his staff was a Tier 1 weapon unique to summoners, the Illusion Staff. Tier 1 weapons were the most suitable for Tier 1 classes, aside from epic weapons. They could maximize a Tier 1 player's combat power, which even the best dark gold weapons could not accomplish. At the moment, even first-rate guild only had 1 or 2 epic items. Some had none at all. Although super guilds were slightly better off in this regard, they could not arm every one of their apex experts with epic items. Generally, these experts only used dark gold items. Wielding a Tier 1 weapon in the Sacred Temple spoke volumes of the youth's combat standards. "No need. It just so happens that I have a reason to seek him out. Since he has presented himself, things couldn't be better." When Quiet Melody saw Shifeng, a faint smile appeared on her beautiful, charming face, her smile mesmerizing several of the Sacred Temple members. "Seek him out?" The summoner youth was slightly stunned. Doubtful, he turned to look at Shifeng as he wondered, who is he? Quiet Melody was the Sacred Temple's Vice-Temple Master. She was also one of the guild's apex experts. Very few in the virtual gaming world could attract her attention. Seeing the summoner's confusion, Quiet Melody chuckled as she explained, "Fantasy, you might not know of him since you've recently graduated from the newcomer's training, but he is none other than Zero Wings Yifeng. So, you're the Yifeng that defeated Sirius." The youth named Lonely Fantasy addressed Shifeng, envy blooming in his heart. However, rather than envying Shifeng's strength, he was jealous of the attention Quiet Melody gave Shifeng. He was a genius that had been nurtured by the Sacred Temple. Of the many newcomers who had recently graduated from the temple's training program and become internal members, he ranked within the top 5. The Sacred Temple was a super guild, and it chose the newcomers it nurtured from the guild's elite members. Those who stood out among these elites were the cream of the crop. In any first-rate guild, these individuals could easily become the strongest combatants. These individuals were the virtual gaming world's blue blood experts. Yet, a lowborn individual like Shi Feng had defeated one of the Battle Wolves Guild's old monsters. Moreover, Shi Feng received Quiet Melody's attention, whom he admired. Why wouldn't he be jealous? Unknowingly, a hunger for battle filled Lonely Fantasy's gaze as he watched Shi Feng. Yi Feng, we meet again. Quiet Melody took the initiative to greet Shi Feng. If not for your loan to Hidden Cloud, I might have been unlucky. During the last Blackwing auction, the Nine Heavens Pavilion's Hidden Cloud had beaten her in the auction for the Golden Tablet. In the end, however, a mysterious NPC had assassinated him for that tablet. Moreover, Hidden Cloud had not been able to log into God's domain for a long period after that incident. He had become a laughingstock among the super guilds. Even now, Quiet Melody broke out in a cold sweat whenever she thought back to how she had fought so hard for the secret technique tablet. Losing money was one thing. Losing time was crucial. Every minute and second counted to the various guilds' experts. If they could, these experts would spend every minute in the game. If they couldn't log into God's domain for several days, their progress would be wounded. The damage might be less severe for someone like herself, who had lost interest in the battle for the guild leader's seat and was content as a vice-temple master and holding some shares of the guild. However, for an ambitious person like Hidden Cloud, who vied to become the Nine Heavens Pavilion's first hall master, the damage was tremendous. You must be here for some rare scrolls, right? Quiet Melody said, her gaze shifting towards the magic scrolls filling the display cabinets. Smiling faintly, she continued, unfortunately, I have purchased all of the rare scrolls here. If you wish to buy some, you will have to wait until tomorrow. Temple Master Melody is quite impressive. I'm surprised that you found this place, Shi Feng said as he swept a glance over the display cabinets. Indeed, just as Quiet Melody had said, the rare scrolls were gone. Even the monster repellent scrolls, which had no apparent use at this stage of the game, were sold out. It's nothing. I just stumbled upon this shop, Quiet Melody replied casually. She then revealed a few of the rare scrolls she had purchased. Looking at Shi Feng, she said softly, which scroll are you looking for? If you are in a hurry, I can sell a few to you at cost. The Sacred Temple members were shocked. They thought that they were hallucinating. Quiet Melody was the Sacred Temple's vice-temple master. Even if one disregarded her status, her appearance was enough to make countless men and women swoon. Aside from the required respect for the guild leader and the guild's older generation, she almost never expressed goodwill towards anyone. Yet she was doing exactly that for Shi Feng. Even if Shi Feng was a particularly skilled fighter with astonishing strength, that shouldn't warrant Quiet Melody's warmth. After all, they belonged to different guilds. Moreover, their guild possessed many experts who were stronger than Shi Feng. Sister Melody, we need these scrolls urgently. If we sell them to someone else, Lonely Fantasy quickly interjected. It's fine. We purchased a few extra as a precaution. Quiet Melody smiled, responding to the summoner youth's advice with indifference. However, Lonely Fantasy knew that these rare magic scrolls were crucial to complete their quest. On the off chance that they ran out during the quest, they may fall on the very edge of success. If that happened, their previous efforts would go to waste. He could not understand why Quiet Melody wanted to befriend Shi Feng. What was so good about this swordsman? Many thanks. I only need 4 monster repellent scrolls. Shi Feng stated, not beating around the bush. His agreement with Bloodfang was extremely important. If the monsters raided the town before he was prepared, without the monster repellent scroll, he would have to pay 30,000 gold. Moreover, a person of Quiet Melody's status had no reason to trick him and no need to use this opportunity to learn why he had come to this shop. Since the woman wanted to befriend him and there was no enmity between him and the Sacred Temple, he saw no reason to reject her offer. Afterward, Quiet Melody gave Shi Feng 4 monster repellent scrolls in exchange for 20 gold. After receiving the scrolls, Shi Feng turned to look at Quiet Melody, who had been smiling all this time. Sighing, he said, Temple Master Melody, just state your business. I'm assuming that you didn't waste so much time talking to a nobody like me just to sell a few unprofitable scrolls. Chapter 965. Super Guild's Attention. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. It's nothing major. I just wish to purchase an item from Zero Wing. Quiet Melody chuckled at Shi Feng's question. What item are you interested in? Shi Feng began to grow curious. Generally, Any items that Zero Wing sold could be purchased from the Candlelight trading firm. With the Sacred Temple's capabilities, Quiet Melody could even easily afford the limited intermediate mana armor kits. Rather than seeking him out personally, she could simply issue a command, and her subordinates would fetch the items and deliver them to her doorstep. The slots to the Holy City, Quiet Melody responded seriously. How do you know about that? Shifeng's expression immediately darkened. Very few people knew of his acquisition of the Titan City entrance tokens. He highly doubted that Yolan's people would have leaked anything. However, based on Quiet Melody's tone, it was clear that she was certain that he had the entrance tokens. There's no need for surprise. In reality, this news has spread throughout the various super guilds. Quiet Melody smiled. I believe you remember Peerless, right? As a result of his major loss at your hands, Peerless advertised your deeds. He even revealed the secret about Titan City. Moreover, he is very certain that you obtained slots to the Holy City. Before this incident, I never knew that God's domain had such a holy land. Many super guilds are now watching Zero Wing. It is only a matter of time before they contact your guild. I had intended to visit White River City after I had finished shopping here. However, it seems that won't be necessary. Hearing Quiet Melody's explanation, the Sacred Temple members were stunned. Even Lonely Fantasy wondered if he had heard wrong. They had never imagined that Shifeng was actually responsible for the Pantheon Elders' suffering. Even newbies knew about Pantheon's Peerless. He was a big shot on the same level as Quiet Melody, yet Shifeng had killed such a powerful character. It was unbelievable. Field battles were different from the PvP battles in the Dark Arena. Although Peerless was not as powerful as Sirius, one could use various tools in a field battle. Many powerful experts had also accompanied Peerless, making it even more difficult to kill him. Moreover, from listening to Quiet Melody's words, the item in Shifeng's hands was even tempting to the various super guilds, so much so that a vice temple master like Quiet Melody deemed it necessary to make a personal visit. This was a first in Sacred Temple's history. Generally, when dealing with a guild like Zero Wing, it was a miracle if the Sacred Temple even sent someone from middle management, yet the guild had delegated the negotiations with Zero Wing to a core upper echelon. Lonely Fantasy was confused. Zero Wing was merely an upstart guild in God's domain, yet it warranted treatment that first-rate guilds dreamed of. How did it manage this? So, he's the one who let it leak. Shifeng smiled bitterly as a realization struck him. It seems that had been his final chance. He now, more or less, understood Peerless' actions during the entrance trial. It was no wonder why the high and mighty Peerless of Pantheon had tried to negotiate halfway through the battle. Without a doubt, that had been his last chance to challenge the entrance trial. After losing that chance, he would have to wait a long time before he could try to enter the Holy City again. He might not even get another chance. Since he had lost this opportunity, he wouldn't let the culprit behind his failure get off scot-free. Hence, he had spread the news and pointed the various super guilds towards Zero Wing. Our Sacred Temple also knows how valuable the slots are, so we won't ask for too many. 10 will be enough. I believe that with how many slots Zero Wing obtained, trading 10 shouldn't be an issue. Moreover, we are more than willing to pay a sufficient fee in either money or items, Quiet Melody unhurriedly explained her offer. In an ordinary guild, the Holy City slots would, at most, add a few advanced lifestyle players. However, it was a different story for super guilds. Super guilds like the Sacred Temple had many lifestyle players who were masters in other virtual reality games. Unfortunately, as these masters were still unfamiliar with God's domain's lifestyle classes, they could only utilize a small fraction of their true abilities. However, with access to the Holy City of Titan, these past masters would rapidly become true lifestyle masters in God's domain. Once these masters could exert their true abilities, rather than just generating limited profits, the Sacred Temple's network of shops could finally be put to good use. Hence, to obtain the slots to the Holy City, the Sacred Temple was willing to pay a massive price. If Zero Wing is willing to sell the slots, the Sacred Temple is willing to trade epic items or golden lands in major cities for them. Since Shifeng had remained silent, Quiet Melody decided to use the Sacred Temple's trump card. One needed more than just money to afford epic items and major cities' golden lands. It was especially true for the lands. Even a fool knew that these lands' value had room to grow. If not for how important lifestyle masters were to the Sacred Temple, the temple would never have considered these bargaining chips. Although I want to agree to your offer, The Holy City slots are too precious. I believe that you know just how important they are. Moreover, to tell you the truth, Zero Wing has already used many of our slots. Even if I wanted to trade them to you, Zero Wing doesn't have many left. If you wish to buy them, I'll have to discuss your offer with my guild leader. Shi Feng did not openly reject Quiet Melody's request. After all, the sacred temple offered an impressive price. Moreover, based on Quiet Melody had said, it seemed that multiple super guilds were very interested in the Holy City's entrance tokens. Even if he told the truth and claimed that Zero Wing had used all of its slots, none of the super guilds would believe him. At which point, Zero Wing would have earned many new enemies for no reason at all. This was all a part of Peerless' sinister plan. I understand. I'll have to request that you speak with guild leader Black Flame then. If he is willing to trade, our offer will not disappoint. Quiet Melody nodded, not surprised in the least about this outcome. Updated by Novelful.com. In her opinion, Shi Feng was merely one of Zero Wing's upper echelons, and the Holy City slots could decide the fate of a trading firm. Naturally, such an important decision fell to the guild's leader. As for whether or not Black Flame would agree to the Sacred Temple's offer, she was unsure. However, she didn't believe that it was likely that he would refuse the offer. After all, golden lands in major cities were too valuable. They were also something that Zero Wing needed urgently. There simply was no reason for Black Flame to refuse. Chapter 966, Candlelight Auction. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. After Shi Feng finished his conversation with Quiet Melody, he pretended to contact Black Flame. In reality, though, he contacted Fire Dance. After all, he was Black Flame. How could he possibly contact himself? He had only said something about it to hide his identity. Had he made the decision as Yi Feng, he would have roused Quiet Melody's suspicions. Shi Feng had to admit that the Sacred Temple's offer was tempting. At the same time, it served as a reminder. Zero Wing's number of lands couldn't even compare to a first-rate guild's, not to mention super guilds. It had fewer than an ordinary second-rate guild. However, this could not be helped. These guilds had far stronger foundations than Zero Wing. These guilds had joined God's domain with plenty of starting capital. Their members also spanned across many cities. Moreover, these guilds had invested almost all of the coins they earned from their money-farming teams into purchasing various cities' lands. Now players had been developing in God's domain for quite some time, these guilds' advantages were beginning to manifest. In stark contrast to these guilds, Zero Wing had started in God's domain with absolutely nothing. Its possession of lands in so many cities was already impressive. Now that God's domain had been operating for so long, even if Zero Wing had a lot of money, the various large guilds had already bought out the lands in the various NPC cities. These guilds treated their lands like their babies. It was practically impossible for Zero Wing to purchase these lands at a reasonable price without presenting something that these guilds hungered for. The Holy City slots provided a golden opportunity. Currently, the Candlelight trading firm had only spread its influence to a few major cities. By the time the lifestyle players in Titan City reached the advanced rank, the firm's small corner of the market wouldn't be enough to display its true prowess. If the trading firm obtained a few plots of land in Empire's top 10 major cities, it would secure a far larger customer base. If he took into account the strengthening device and the designs unique to Titan City, Candlelight trading firm's profits would make the income from Stone Forest Town look pitiful. At the moment, however, Shi Feng did not have any Titan City entrance tokens on hand. Even if he did, he had no intentions of selling them to Quiet Melody right now. Since there were so many super guilds craving their own slots to the Holy City, he had to auction them and obtain the best price. Moreover, by doing so, he wouldn't invoke these super guilds' ire, preventing Peerless' plans from coming to fruition. Currently, his only method of entering Titan City was the Holy City's emblem. However, the emblem had a 7-day cooldown. He had used the emblem recently, so if he wanted to enter the Holy City, he'd have to wait. He could use these 7 days to prepare. After all, purchasing lands was a significant expenditure. Even if the Holy City slots were more valuable, he could not trade a single slot for a major city's golden land unless the Super Guild had lost its mind. In the past, a single Holy City slot only sold for several hundred gold. Even if it sold for more than that at the moment, the most anyone would pay was roughly 1,000 gold. On the other hand, major cities' golden lands were worth over 10,000 gold. With the slots he had on hand, he could afford at most one plot of land. This was not the desired outcome. He planned to trade the Holy City slots for lands in major cities, offering 1 slot and coins to make up the cost difference. This way he could purchase 10 plots of lands by selling 10 slots. Hence, collecting enough coins was now a priority. Fire. Prepare the main force and both the Dark God's Legion's official members and reserve members to advance on the Undead Gorge. Halt all other quests and activities temporarily, Shifeng instructed. Don't forget to collect extra strengthening devices and magic scrolls from Candlelight as well. Although the Undead Gorge is an Azura mode regional dungeon, its monsters are much stronger than in the Stoneclaw Mountains. Don't carelessly lose your lives in there. Shifeng had never heard of the Undead Gorge before. However, as it was related to the new expansion pack, it was definitely not an ordinary regional dungeon. It should offer an abundance of resources, particularly magic crystals. Currently there were too many players in the Stoneclaw Mountains. There weren't enough monsters to go around. On the other hand, not only was the Undead Gorge a new regional dungeon, but it also required more to enter than the Stoneclaw Mountains. Guilds wouldn't be able to dispatch as many members to the dungeon. With this, Zero Wing could farm magic crystals far more efficiently. As long as he had enough magic crystals, he could use the teleportation house to turn them into mountains of glittering gold coins. With this, he could earn what he needed to purchase lands during the next 7 days. Understood. Fire Dance nodded. After Shifeng finished issuing his orders, he smiled as he turned back to Quiet Melody. Communication between players could be set to private mode. This way, unrelated parties would not overhear the conversation. Naturally, the surrounding Sacred Temple members had heard nothing Shifeng had said, so these people assumed that he had been speaking with Black Flame. Temple Master Melody, I have told our guild leader about your offer. Our guild leader has considered this problem, hence he has already prepared and decided to auction off the slots. In 7 days the Candlelight trading firm will hold its first auction. Not only will the Holy City slots be available, but many other unimaginable items will also be for sale, Shifeng said. To participate in the Candlelight auction, you will need to hold at least 1 deed to a major city's golden land. These lands will be used to bid for the Holy City slots. Of course, Zero Wing will supplement the cost for each land with coins. However, Zero Wing will only announce the auction to the public in 3 days. This is all I can say for the moment. As for who obtains the Holy City slots, that will depend on the strength and capital of the various guilds attending. Updated by Novelful.com. The moment Shifeng finished talking, Lonely Fantasy, who stood beside Quiet Melody, flew into a rage, growling, "What do you guys take those Holy City slots for? Do you really think our sacred temple can't obtain our own?" "Fantasy, that's enough." Quiet Melody reproached her subordinate. Although Lonely Fantasy tried to continue, when he saw the fury in Quiet Melody's eyes, he snapped his mouth closed. "Since Zero Wing intends to sell the Holy City slots, we are lucky. The Sacred Temple will certainly attend the auction," Quiet Melody said, her eyes carrying a silent apology. She then departed from the shop with Lonely Fantasy and the others. Lonely Fantasy still wanted to say something after leaving the shop, but Quiet Melody's glare silenced him. "Fantasy, you have just officially joined the Sacred Temple, so there is much about God's domain that you do not know. Zero Wing is not as simple as you think. It was bold enough to provoke the super first-rate Guild Dragon Phoenix Pavilion and the Super Guild King's return. Do you really think Zero Wing will think much of the Sacred Temple's threats?" Quiet Melody scolded Lonely Fantasy, shaking her head ruefully. "While we wait, rather than following me around, head to the intelligence department and learn about the game's various guilds. God's domain is not the shallow game you think it is." Lonely Fantasy was taken aback by Quiet Melody's words. He had not realized that Zero Wing was powerful enough to provoke King's return. Just what kind of guild was it? As for Shifeng, after obtaining the monster repellent scrolls, he returned to White River City. As soon as he returned, he headed for his warehouse in the bank. Previously, too many things had demanded his attention. He hadn't yet had a chance to use the damaged god crystal he had obtained during the entrance trial. The Holy Grail already possessed immense power. If he could upgrade it further, the thought alone excited him. Chapter 967, Damaged God Crystal. Hellscythe _Fluffy Goblin. At White River City's bank, before Shifeng had arrived, A crowd of players had formed in front of the building's entrance, selling raw materials in bulk. A stack of frost grass for only 15 silver. A stack of flame flowers for 21 silver. First come, first served. Urgently selling attribute gemstones. Tier 1 gemstones for 7 silver each. Tier 2 for 75 silver each. Limited stock available. Players were selling all sorts of items near the bank's entrance. Level 30 dark gold equipment was even available for purchase. Current mainstream players were only level 33, while elite players were generally level 36. Even guild elite players dreamed of owning level 30 dark gold equipment. Very few people were willing to sell these items on the market. Generally, only players from small but powerful workshops sold equipment of such caliber. After all, ordinary teams could not obtain dark gold equipment. However, rather than sell dark gold equipment for in-game currency, these small-scale workshops generally sold their items to guilds for credits, which they used to maintain their workshops' operations. After all, such workshops usually didn't have the financial support of a corporation. These are so cheap. I want 3 Tier 1 Strength gemstones and 1 Tier 2 Agility gemstone. Get lost. I want 2 Tier 2 Strength gemstones. I want 3 stacks of flame flowers. Aside from the group of peddling players, another crowd fought desperately to purchase the items for sale. A majority of these players were merchant players and guild logistic members. Are these people insane? Shifeng could not help his surprise when he heard the various prices. Regardless of the herbs and ores, the gemstone prices alone were astounding. The current market value for Tier 1 gemstones was 9 silver, which was slightly lower than its initial price. He could easily turn a profit of 2 silver if he bought them for 7 silver. As for the Tier 2 gemstone, its prices had not fallen, but had risen instead. Currently, each sold for between 95 silver and 1 gold on the market. Moreover, Tier 2 gemstones were still in high demand. Even after many players had obtained their Tier 2 classes in the past, the majority of their gemstones had been Tier 1. Only guild members or wealthy experts could afford a full set of Tier 2 gemstones at this stage of the game. Moreover, many of the herbs and ores sold were relatively rare. They were still extremely difficult to purchase from the market, yet so many players hawked them here. Shifeng even wondered if some large guild had lost its mind. Regardless, Shifeng had no intentions of missing this rare opportunity. He might have just walked away if only the attribute gemstones were available for a low price. After all, he could obtain much cheaper attribute gemstones from the Dark Denver. Moreover, he normally sold these gemstones through the Candlelight trading firm. However, it was a different story for rare herbs and ores. He had no shortcuts to obtain these items. He had to rely on his guild members to collect them gradually. Now that someone sold them for 20% below market price, he would be doing the Candlelight trading firm a disservice if he didn't purchase them all. Hence, Shifeng joined the line of customers. Most of the players in the queue only purchased 1 or 2 stacks of materials. Only merchant players and guild players could afford a little more. However, these players focused on hard currencies such as the attribute gemstone. Although they would require some time to resell, they were certain to make a profit with such a low cost. How many rare herbs and ores do you have? When it was finally Shifeng's turn, he examined the middle-aged vendor. The man was only a little over level 10. He was obviously a guild player, as only guilds had such logistic players, yet neither the man nor the players helping him wore a guild emblem. Dear guest, let me assure you that we have an abundant supply. We have as much as you could possibly want. The middle-aged man revealed a businessman's smile as he glanced at the cloaked Shifeng. I see. All right then. I want 3,000 stacks of ice dew flower, 3,000 stacks of moonlight grass. Shifeng listed various herbs and ores, requesting 3,000 stacks of each. Ice dew flowers and moonlight grass were both main materials for producing the ice resistance potion. In addition, Shifeng had asked for the main materials necessary to craft the fire resistance potion. As long as he had these materials, he could produce ice resistance and fire resistance potions in bulk. By the time White River City grew and the city's players could travel to the Eclipse Gate, these 2 potions would sell like hotcakes. Shifeng clearly remembered that, shortly after the flying ship feature launched, these potions' prices had skyrocketed. The raw materials also became incredibly popular. White River City's current development speed far outstripped that of the past. Based on Shifeng's estimation, it wouldn't be long before the flying ships were available in White River City. If he stockpiled ice resistance and fire resistance potions now, by the time players could travel to the Eclipse Gate, he would make a fortune. Dear customer, are you sure you want so many materials? Shock lit up the middle-aged man's face as he listened to Shifeng's request. The bag space of 1 or 2 people won't be enough to hold so many. If you really want them, we'll need some time to transfer the materials over from other cities. Even if he emptied his warehouse in White River City, he wouldn't come close to fulfilling Shifeng's order. Sure, I can wait, Shifeng said, looking nonchalant. In any case, he had something to do in the bank. If there was money to be made, he could be patient. Hearing Shifeng's confidence, the middle-aged man smiled brightly. Hurriedly, he said in a respectful tone, "Please wait here for an hour. I'll send my men to fetch the materials. However, we don't have enough stock of some of the materials you have requested. Do you still wish to purchase them?" He could make as much money selling Shifeng these materials as he had made from all of his previous customers. So be it. In any case, bring as many of the materials I listed as you can. I'll buy everything. As a precaution, let's sign a contract. I'll return in an hour to find you. If you prepare the items early, you can meet me in the bank's main hall, Shifeng said. He then produced a contract and handed it to the middle-aged man. Please rest assured, I'll have my men bring the materials immediately. After the middle-aged man read through the contract, he signed it without hesitation. He then began to contact his subordinates. As for Shifeng, he entered the bank's main hall. "Hello, sir, how may I be of service to you today?" The female NPC behind the front counter smiled as she asked Shifeng politely. "I want to enter my personal warehouse." "Here is the key," Shifeng said. He then passed a bronze key to the female NPC. "Please follow me, sir." After the NPC received the key, her attitude towards Shifeng shifted, showing more respect. The key Shifeng had produced was paired to a large private warehouse. This made him one of the bank's VIP guests. No player could steal information about a private warehouse's contents. This was the reason that Shifeng had rented one for himself. Upon arrival, Shifeng carefully opened one of the warehouse's safes. The instant the safe opened, the air in the private warehouse grew heavy as a powerful aura surged from within the safe. The safe contained none other than the legendary ranked Holy Grail. Originally, Shifeng had intended to retrieve the damaged God Crystal from his bag. However, as if this God Crystal had been summoned, it flew from his bag without his involvement. As the God Crystal hovered before Shifeng, it radiated a faint, golden glow. The God Crystal, which should have lost its power, seemed resurrected. It radiated a powerful divine might that prevented Shifeng from moving. Chapter 968, Evolving the Emblem. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. How is this divine might be so powerful? Shifeng could only look at the damaged God Crystal. He could not even move a finger. The powerful divine might could even overpower Tier 5 NPCs. It was hard to imagine that this was merely a damaged God Crystal. Even the complete God Crystal he had previously snatched from a Tier 4 monster had not been as powerful as this. If he weren't in his private warehouse, the God Crystal's divine might be enough to paralyze every player in the bank, causing a commotion in White River City. Although this damaged God Crystal was quite powerful, in front of the Holy Grail, it was a sheep for the slaughter. It could only wait for its death. The Holy Grail then radiated a purple aura that spread throughout the warehouse. This purple aura ate away at the divine might rapidly, and Shifeng's private warehouse was soon void of divine magic. As for the damaged God Crystal, it could barely stay afloat while it struggled desperately against the Holy Grail's aura. Suddenly, the sound of a system notification reached Shifeng's ears. "System, do you wish to allow the Holy Grail to absorb the Titan Core?" "This is a Titan Core?" The sudden revelation surprised Shifeng. He used omniscient eyes once more to check the damaged God Crystal. Titan Core, the 10 great saints of Titan's greatest masterpiece. The Titan Core is capable of supplying a near-infinite amount of energy. It originally served as the Titan Fortress's power core. However, it had been heavily damaged during the war between gods. When Shifeng finished reading the description, he was thunderstruck. He had heard of this item before. It could be used to construct a war fortress's power core, which was also the most important component in a war fortress. A war fortress was far more difficult to construct than a city, as it was a machine meant for slaughter. Even Tier 5 NPCs would flee from a war fortress, as a single, random strike was enough to end their lives. However, moving a powerful war fortress required an astronomical amount of energy. Hence, one needed a very powerful power source. Among the available materials in God's domain, the Titan core was the best option. Speaking of war fortresses, Shi Feng had seen one in the Physis Canyon. He had also accepted the unique quest Steel Fortress Borussia. He had nearly lost his life attempting to power the Steel Fortress Borussia with the Titan's heart. However, although the Titan's heart could also be used as a power core, it was far weaker than the Titan core. The Titan core possessed divine might, while the Titan's heart only possessed power. If the Titan's heart were powerful enough to threaten Tier 5 classes, the Titan core was powerful enough to invoke God's fear. Moreover, unlike the Titan core, the Titan's heart's energy was limited. Even 100 Titan's hearts were not as valuable as one Titan core. Do I absorb it? Shi Feng hesitated. To a guild, the Titan core was leagues more important than a legendary item. Of the many components needed to construct a war fortress, the power core was the most difficult to obtain. In the past, this had caused many headaches for many of God's domain's major powers. Moreover, even if they obtained a power source, they would not mobilize their war fortress due to the immense energy consumption. However, there was no denying a war fortress's extreme power. If a Tier 5 player could defend a town with a player population over 1 million, a war fortress could defend nearly half of a kingdom's territory. Moreover, that was with a limited energy source when it could not be moved casually. Obtaining or producing another power source was immensely difficult. If he could equip a war fortress with the Titan core, the war fortress would have no problems defending an entire kingdom. Even the super guilds in the past had not had such a weapon of mass destruction. Moreover, powering a war fortress was only one of the Titan core's functions. The Titan core could also be used in a player-constructed city to emulate the holy city of Titan. According to legend, 18 Titan cores powered Titan City, granting it infinite energy. In the distant past, a large group of Tier 6 gods had attacked the holy city. In the end, however, these gods had failed. Titan City's dense mana and its floating lifestyle association were due to its endless amount of energy. One could just imagine how precious a Titan core was. If he allowed the Holy Grail to absorb the Titan core now, it would be nigh impossible to obtain another in the future. After all, Titan City's 10 saints were long gone. There was no one around who was capable of producing another Titan core. In the end, after giving it some thought, Shi Feng decided to withhold the Titan core from the Holy Grail. Although the Titan core was damaged and could not be used, there was hope of repairing it. After all, he had the Holy City's emblem. He could enter Titan City anytime he wanted. As the Titan core's birthplace, he should be able to learn how to repair it in Titan City. To stop the Holy Grail from craving the Titan core, Shi Feng stored the core in another safe. No one was allowed to open the safes in a private warehouse without the user's approval. The items in these safes would also be disconnected from the outside world. Sure enough, after Shi Feng stored the Titan core inside a safe, the Holy Grail receded its aura and fell dormant. It seems I'll have to look for other god crystals to restore the Holy Grail. Shi Feng sighed as he looked at the Holy Grail, which emitted a purple hue. He suddenly had a realization. Since the Grail can evolve an item, I wonder if it can evolve the Holy City's emblem. Although there was no indication of the Holy City's emblem having a rank, the Titan City entrance tokens were divided into ranks. His black iron entrance tokens allowed wielders to enter the Holy City for 3 days. If players possessed sufficient reputation, they could extend their stay. Silver was the next rank. Wielders of the silver entrance token could stay in the Holy City for 6 days. Similarly, they could extend their stay with sufficient reputation. The highest ranking entrance token was the gold entrance token. It allowed players to stay in the Holy City for up to 10 days. Which token players acquired depended on which difficulty they chose when challenging the entrance trial. Titan City's entrance trial was not limited to one difficulty setting. Only, as Shi Feng's team was still too low level and only consisted of Tier 1 players, they had not had any other options. When the team had Tier 2 players, the entrance trial would provide a hard mode difficulty. As long as players cleared the hard mode trial, they could obtain silver tokens. When Tier 3 players were present in the team, Hell mode would be made available, from which players could obtain the golden tokens. The normal mode of Titan City's entrance trial was already as difficult, or more, as the Hell mode difficulty of a 100-man large-scale team dungeon, not to mention hard mode and Hell mode. Even in the past, Shifeng had never heard of a team obtaining the gold tokens, and extremely few teams had managed to obtain the silver tokens. Most had settled for black iron/novelful. Since the entrance tokens were divided by ranks, the Holy City's emblems should have ranks as well. After all, he had obtained his Holy City's emblem from normal mode. What about those obtained from hard mode and hell mode? Thinking up to this point, Shifeng could not help but click on the Holy Grail and select its Power of Evolution skill. He chose the Holy City's emblem as the evolution's target. Chapter 969, Evolved Effects. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. I should be able to evolve it, right? Although Shifeng had chosen to evolve the Holy City's emblem, he still wasn't sure that his plan was feasible. After all, unlike weapons and equipment, the Holy City's emblem did not have a rank to differentiate it from others. Suddenly, a strand of purple mist flowed from the light blue Holy Grail, gently wrapping around the flashing silver emblem in Shifeng's hand as if scanning it. 3 seconds later, Shifeng heard the sound of a system notification. System, do you wish to sacrifice 1000 HP permanently to evolve the Holy City's emblem? Sure enough, a legendary item is amazing. Excitement lit up Shifeng's face. Although losing 1000 HP stung, the return was worth the cost. As long as the evolution succeeded, this item would be far more valuable than an epic item. Shifeng agreed to the evolution. Shifeng's maximum HP then fell by 1000, from 26,300 to 25,300. However, despite the loss, Shifeng's HP was still much higher than Cola's. If Shifeng activated the 7 Luminaries' Rings Aura of Earth, he could even become a sturdier MT than Cola. As Shifeng's HP decreased, streams of green liquid flowed from his body and into the Holy Grail. In turn, the Holy Grail radiated a dazzling purple glow that gradually melded with the Holy City's emblem. Suddenly, the emblem radiated a dazzling golden glow that enveloped the warehouse. Was it a success? Shifeng stared at the Holy City's emblem, tension tightening his features. If the evolution were a success, the Candlelight trading firm's future would be limitless. While other guilds were expending effort and resources to nurture advanced lifestyle players, he could easily nurture one batch after another, giving the Candlelight trading firm a massive advantage over other trading firms. At that time, even if Candlelight lacked shops, it could easily overwhelm its rivals with a large stock of advanced products. If they could nurture a master rank player, they could earn staggering amounts of money. If the evolution failed, though, he would have to wait another 10 days before he could try again. He would also have to sacrifice another 1000 HP. The thought soured Shifeng's mood. However, as depressing as it was, he would gladly sacrifice another 1000 HP. After all, Titan City held the key to the Candlelight trading firm's future. After the golden glow dissipated, the originally silver Holy City's emblem shone a pale gold. Moreover, tiny divine runes had been carved on the emblem, which gathered surrounding mana. It almost seemed like a faint mist had wrapped around the emblem, giving it an aura of mystery. Following which, Shifeng inspected the Holy City's emblem statistics. Holy City's emblem opens a transfer gate to Titan City. A maximum of 20 people may pass through the gate. Each time the wielder of the Holy City's emblem enters the Holy City of Titan, they can extend their stay by up to 2 days. Cooldown, 7 days. After Shifeng finished reading the introduction, he was ecstatic. Although the evolved emblem did not extend a player's stay like the higher-ranked entrance tokens, it now allowed 20 people to enter Titan City rather than 10. Moreover, the wielder could stay in the Holy City 2 days more than everyone else. Now, the Holy City's emblem was practically a permanent residence permit for Shifeng. Generally, ordinary players could only stay in Titan City for 3 days, while Shifeng, as one of the city's honorary citizens, could stay up to 5 days. Including the emblem's new effects, he could extend his stay in the Holy City to 7 days, which was exactly how long the cooldown lasted. With this, even if Shifeng did not raise his reputation, he could stay in Titan City as long as he wanted. Titan City was heavenly for both lifestyle players and combat players. Not bad. With this, I won't have to worry about time constraints when I'm questing in Titan City. Shifeng smiled at the pale gold emblem in his hand. Titan City was a holy land to both lifestyle players and combat players. Only, as the slots to enter the city were extremely valuable, Most guilds that possessed them only used them on lifestyle players who could contribute more to the guild than combat players. However, as more players reached Titan City, combat players would discover the Holy City's benefits. They would also discover that they would enjoy just as many benefits as lifestyle players. Only the various guilds had only discovered late in the game. By then, Titan City's benefits were no longer useful to Apex experts. Starmoon City, Ouroboros' guild residence. Due to the Blackwater Corporation's visit, the entire guild was a mess. Many of the players lounged around the guild residence's main hall, not in the mood to level up. Instead, they chatted among themselves about the guild's situation. At the same time, an argument raged in the residence's meeting room. Do your companies really intend to side with the Blackwater Corporation? Have you never considered the fact that Blackwater is simply trying to annex Ouroboros and turn it into one of its toys? At that time, your companies won't have anything to do with Ouroboros at all. Zhao Yueru bellowed, furious as she glared at the several guild elders beside her. Won't you reconsider this? The guild elders not affiliated with the company nodded, showing their support for Zhao Yueru's words. The Blackwater Corporation was ruthless and cruel. Before it had even obtained Ouroboros, it was asking its guild leader to step down and relinquish full management rights. One could only imagine what Blackwater would do once it truly secured the guild. Ouroboros' name would vanish from the virtual gaming world. After the Blackwater Corporation obtained 90% of Ouroboros' shares, it would only be a matter of time before it obtained the remaining 10% and devoured Ouroboros. Aside from the compensation fees, these companies would have nothing left. Currently, God's Domain's popularity was rising rapidly due to the Mind Space System's launch. Even a fool could tell what would become of God's Domain in the future. Otherwise, so many companies from around the world wouldn't be investing in the game. As a first-rate guild, Ouroboros had a significant advantage. It had already amassed plenty of lands. However, if they allowed Blackwater to take everything, these companies would never be able to establish another guild as powerful as Ouroboros, no matter how much money they spent. By giving in to the Blackwater Corporation, these companies were ignoring long-term profits for short-term gains. Regarding the problem of your funds, I have begun to sell the materials in the guild's warehouse to collect more. Including the funds I have and based on my estimations, we should be able to fund your company's resistance against Blackwater for some time. Ouroboros can use this time to capture a few towns. With the income from these towns, the guild will be able to sustain itself. It will no longer have to purchase coins from others or hire money farming teams. Meanwhile, you will retain your shares of Ouroboros. What do you think? /novelful. Calm Gentle Snow proposed her plan calmly as she shifted her gaze towards the several elders representing various companies. Although her plan was effectively cutting off Ouroboros' means of retreat, this was the guild's best option. Chapter 970, Greatest Advantage. Hellscythe_Fluffy Goblin. The company representative elders fell silent after Gentle Snow's proposal. They had never imagined that Gentle Snow would take such decisive action, sacrificing the materials their guild had struggled to accumulate. This would damage Ouroboros immensely and be robbing Peter to pay Paul. In reality, she had not solved the fundamental problem. /novelful. Calm, however, if they gathered enough capital to cover their company's sudden shortage of funds and endure this difficult period, their companies could make a comeback and slap the Blackwater Corporation in the face. Moreover, as Gentle Snow had said, if Ouroboros could obtain a few towns within a short time and maintain Ouroboros' profitable state, their companies would hold onto Ouroboros tightly, rather than surrender their shares to Blackwater. In God's Domain, captured towns were different from NPC cities. Unlike in NPC cities, where players were under many restrictions, players could build as they wished in their own town. Moreover, constructing a house in a town was far cheaper. Most importantly, players wouldn't be limited in what items they could sell. In the shops in NPC cities, players were only allowed to sell items that were native to God's Domain. In a player-owned town, however, players could sell foreign products such as cosmetic items. Unlike weapons and equipment, cosmetic items did not possess attributes. At the same time, cosmetic items could only be worn within player-owned territory, they could not be worn in the fields or NPC cities. Moreover, designing cosmetic items in the game was not an easy task. Although it was not as troublesome and meticulous as weaving, leather making, or forging attributed equipment, and crafting required an advanced lifestyle player's skills. Cosmetic items could only be crafted using native materials in God's domain. As a result, players were required to look for suitable materials to create pleasant-looking cosmetic items, which was not easy. Furthermore, more than one form of currency could be used. In player-owned towns, shops had the option of selling their items for either credits or coins, which was convenient for both players and shops. Take Stone Forest Town for example. As the first town to be captured in Starmoon Kingdom, it had grown considerably. Stone Forest Town's residential player population also increased by the dam. A lack of safety was the only issue as the area was home to high-level monsters. This prevented low-leveled players who only sought entertainment from visiting. Even so, many companies eagerly wanted to cooperate with Zero Wing. It was especially true for companies in the clothing industry. They all wanted to drown Zero Wing in credits. However, for some unknown reason, Zero Wing had turned these companies down. Instead, it constructed hotels, smithies, bars and other establishments. The town was nearly out of space already. Seeing the large numbers of players swarming to Stone Forest Town, many companies had cursed Zero Wing as insane. The guild was ignoring a golden opportunity to earn a fortune. We'll contact our superiors immediately. However, we cannot guarantee that they will be willing to take this risk. The several elders representing companies nodded before logging out of God's domain. Hearing the several elders' answer, the other upper echelons relaxed slightly. Inside Starmoon Kingdom's Divine Colosseum, a large group of players ranging between level 10 and level 20 wandered in and out of Trial Tower. Although these players were not very high-leveled, and their equipment was subpar at best, others were shocked by how many floors they were clearing. Of these players, the weakest among them had even reached the Trial Tower's 6th floor. Brother Wave, the people that young Master Jing sent are incredible. Their improvement speeds are astounding. It won't even be long before they surpass me, a tall level 39 ranger who sat beside Abandoned Wave said, smiling bitterly. No matter what was said or done, he was a famous expert in the virtual gaming world. This time, he had been specially hired to train a group of newcomers who had recently joined the virtual gaming world. He had initially thought that this would be a simple job. However, the moment he met these newcomers, he sensed the dense killing intent and hostility. Their auras were nothing like an ordinary player's, and he could instantly tell that these experts had been well-tempered in life combat. Among these newcomers, a few even felt stifling. These newcomers had already surpassed him and reached the realm he had always dreamed of. This is all thanks to your guidance. Otherwise, they wouldn't have grasped God's domain's combat basics so quickly. When more newcomers arrive, I'll have to trouble you again. Abandoned Wave was quite satisfied as he watched the new group enter the Trial Tower. As long as he raised these people's levels, it would only be a matter of time before Blackwater took over Starmoon Kingdom. Before he had joined the game, he would never have imagined that combat in God's domain was as realistic as real-world combat. The only differences were players' skills and superhuman physiques. To the Blackwater Corporation, the game's realistic combat was its greatest advantage. After all, Blackwater was a giant in the fighting world. No one had more combat experts or method of nurturing experts than Blackwater. Unlike other companies which struggled to nurture their own gaming experts in God's domain, it was a simple task for the Blackwater Corporation. Blackwater only needed to assist players in adapting to God's domain's combat style. Suddenly, a bald, robust man rushed up to Abandoned Wave and whispered, "Big Brother Wave, a message has arrived from Ouroboros. It seems that Gentle Snow is trying to use the guild's collected materials to compensate the companies for their missing funds. Moreover, someone in White River City has already agreed to purchase all of Ouroboros' rare herbs and ores. Should we do something to stop her?" Ah, interesting. It seems that Gentle Snow is good for more than just her pretty face. She is a daring beauty. It makes me somewhat reluctant to let her go. Abandoned Wave could not help but roar with laughter. It's a pity that her efforts are pointless. She doesn't understand Blackwater's power. She doesn't know these companies' true intentions either. Gentle Snow has a considerable amount of Ouroboros' shares. Even if those companies pressure her, they can't stop her from selling the materials. However, I can't let her have her way. Notify Gale and the others and have them warn the buyer. I don't want Ouroboros to have a raw material shortage when I take control. Understood. After Abandoned Wave finished issuing his instructions, the bald man left the Divine Colosseum. You're tuning in to the Han Li's Wuxia Adventures YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.